to the NWO Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Logan Bailey.
Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast, Football Edition, brought to you by our primary sponsor, 3Chord. I'm your host, Logan Bailey, and today I'm joined by Keith Brown, Tony Fairchild, and AJ Fairchild. So once again, thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Always.
You're welcome. No problem, baby.
Love it.
Well, it is now the end of the regular season, and the teams that proved that they were worthy enough to make the playoffs have made it, and it's been sealed, and now we are entering playoffs round one this week. So quite a few matchups and quite a few first-round matchups, and we were talking beforehand that they have 2-hour-plus road trips, so against some very tough home seeds. So that's pretty interesting. But again, I don't know, guys. What are your thoughts on going into this first week of playoffs?
I don't know. It's just like you were talking about. There's a lot of teams that got to make a long trip for a first-round playoff game, and you just who's going to come away with that long trip that's going to be victorious, because that's a lot of those that you were talking about were over 2 hours long. I mean, that's a heck of a trip on a bus.
And just looking here, some teams, you have Defiance to Cloverleaf, 2 hours 45 minutes, Bryan to Elyria Catholic, 2 hours 35 minutes, Napoleon to Glenville, 2 hours 31 minutes, Tenora to Highland, 2 hours 26 minutes, and Wayne Trace to Crestview, Ashland, 2 hours and 9 minutes. So those are the teams that we're talking about from our neck of the woods that have to travel.
Well, that's what you get when you play with 16 teams in a playoff. Man.
Yeah, some of those are just do you want to stop out and stretch halfway through, get the kids out and get the blood flowing again?
Take a potty break. I mean, gee whiz. Hey, was there roadside rest on the way down there?
Right.
But no, it's exciting. We're playoff season's here, and it's time to travel on down the road and see who can make that run.
Right. And as me and Logan were talking Friday before our game at Hicksville, 2022 has to be the best weather season
it does
ever, because we didn't have a hint of rain. The sun was out most games, probably average temperature from week 1 to week 10, probably low 70s, I would say.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, it was the weather. Couldn't ask for better weather for this season. Even this Friday's weather still, it looks great from around the area. So
it's like upper 50s. So
yep.
And that's one thing too. Not only like the temperature, but like precipitation. We haven't got a single game this year, I don't think, where it's rained or snowed or sleet or whatever. No. So, and Keith was wearing shorts and his shirt, and it was good weather. And again, even the wind kind of died down. Yeah. We were at Friday night. We were at Hicksville, and no breeze, nice weather. It was an excellent night for some football. So.
Hicksville's tucked down in the in that back there in that park in Hicksville. It's another one of those facilities that's just real kind of nice to play at. Yep. They have a great facility there. Yep. The turf, the field looks great, but it's tucked in and all the trees there, so it kind of takes care of some of that for you.
And you can't forget about the train tracks.
An occasional train or two.
Yes. But comes in more in play in baseball because it's literally right by the baseball track.
But that's something too with Hicksville. And we said too, anytime you can get a football stadium that doesn't have a track around it where you sit closer to the field, those are always the best, just because you feel like you're immersed in the game. I said, Keith and I were up in the press box, and you could hear the coaches down on the sideline before the game talking to each other, and they weren't yelling either. They're just having a normal conversation. I said, man, that's just so cool to be involved like that.
Yeah, I did that with our 8th grade game. Jason Lieb videotapes the games for us, and so I was watching it after we played at Ederton last week. I was kind of watching the film, just kind of going through it, and man, it was amazing how clear I'm like, man, I'm glad. Good thing we don't say anything we're not supposed to say, because you can pick up a lot because you're so close.
Yes.
And it's the other thing is the cheerleaders too. The cheerleaders are right there. So I mean, when you at Sonora, the cheerleaders are way down away, so you don't really hear them. You hear them, but not that well. But man, at Ederton, they're like right by the stand. So
yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and look at last week's picks. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to break Keith's heart this week. And Keith has led all of us year long until this week. And AJ led all of us last week, going 18-1 for picks. And for the first time all year, we have a new leader, and that is the Mr. AJ Fairchild with 157-40 records. So, moment of spotlight for you, AJ. What do you have to say about finally taking the lead?
It's just a lot of the games all season haven't been I know Dad tends to go against the grain a little bit, but a lot of the games are just like kind of come obvious. Like this week, for instance, there's a lot of games and a lot of picks that are just like, well, I can't really go against what anybody else says because like you pretty much can understand who's going to win. Now, there have been quite a few upsets in our eyes, and this week could be one of those. But it's been a lot of fun. Last week I went with Brian and Lipsick, and they both happened to pull out for me. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Lipsick.
Helped AJ pull off the tremendous jump there. But it's the first time again all year that someone has surpassed Keith, but Keith still remains in second and is just one pick behind AJ with 156 and 41 records. So I wouldn't let up too easy there, AJ, because Keith's going to be breathing down your neck trying to take that spot back.
It's like one of those new chairs that you just set in it day after day after day, and you get it broke in. Then your neighbor comes over and says, "Oh, this chair is pretty comfortable." So that's what I was doing with AJ. I was just breaking in a chair.
Yeah, I had to go against Crane last week and picked Bowling Green against Napoleon. That was the only that one in Archbold was we all lost the Archbold game, and but darn it, I let AJ get away with one on me.
Yeah, that's something too. And Tony and I remain tied for third, which we have all year, 149 and 48 record. And Bryce is still in last, 143 and 54, but he's still hanging in there, so he's not quite out of the race yet. So it's been pretty fun. And these playoff games, kind of like AJ said, I feel like this first round will be somewhat easier to pick games. But I mean, as the rounds go on, we still have local Northwest Ohio teams. We'll still pick them. So definitely get more challenging down the road. Let's look at the Week 10 game recaps next, and we'll go ahead and look at the NWO Sports Game of the Week from Week 10, and it was a good game. Wason at Bryan, and Bryan, it was a must-win for them to help get them into the playoffs, and they pulled through, and they won 21-7. You looking at Bryan, and Bryan had a lot to play for in this game, and it was a win-or-go-home, essentially, game because they needed this to propel them into the playoffs. And it was a similar story to last week's game against Archbold for Wason. It was once again the story of Wason's passing attack versus Bryan's rushing attack. And Bryan did just an excellent job at establishing the run game from the start. They start off the game with Jace Kepler and Sam Harrell, the 1-2 punch all the way down the field. They get to the Wason 9, and they try to go for it on fourth down, but they don't convert. But regardless, they were able to establish that run game early on. And again, you look at Bryan quarterback Jace Kepler, what a game from him. He really helped them win that one. He ended up throwing 9 of 12 for 100 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 22 carries for 135 rushing yards, and he had 1 rushing touchdown on top of that. And another big point from this game was how great was it for Bryan to have Sam Harrell back from injury. They missed him a week ago, and he was out, but this week he was back and at least able to make a difference. Though he only had 24 carries for 82 rushing yards, he had 3 receptions for 22 receiving yards. He was able to be that extra threat against that Wason defense had to plan for and had to know where he was at on the field at all times. And he even contributed on defense with an interception, and Bryan ended up having 3 of them. So what are you guys' thoughts from this game here?
For me, that was a game I kind of set on last week, and I changed my pick at the last minute because Wason had kind of struggled with 2 weeks before that. But just kind of going through some of the stats here, I'm really kind of surprised. Bryan led the game in time of possession with 27-20, 27 minutes to 20 minutes. But Bryan ran the ball 48 times, and Wason only ran the ball 17 times. So I would have thought Bryan running the ball, way over double than what Wason was. You thought the time of possession would have been way out of whack in favor of Bryan, but actually it wasn't that bad. So it's just like you said, Logan, it was the rushing attack versus the passing attack, and Bryan just kind of pounded the ball.
I think Bryan actually needed to win that game, if I recall, right, to qualify.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's like Bryan's one of those teams that you kind of don't know what to expect as we head into Week 11 in the playoffs. They're, like you said a couple times during the regular season, they're just kind of like that Jekyll and Hyde team. You don't know what you're going to get from them. Like Coach Redhead probably doesn't even know.
Right.
I mean, you come out, play a fantastic game like this against Wason, and then like during the regular season, during the middle part, you laid a couple eggs. So, but yeah, very, very impressive performance by the Golden Bears in a must-win situation for them.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something too. Like with Bryan, they showed those glimpses throughout the year, but like you said, they're just so inconsistent. Yeah. But you know what they're capable of. I mean, you've seen it against teams throughout the year. But again, this game kind of reminds me of that saying or that people relate to, especially this game and the Napoleon game. You back a dog in the corner and you start pushing him back there, that dog's going to bite back and it's going to fight. So, I mean, they knew what was at stake, and they came out and they fought, and they ended up coming up with a win. So
yeah, they won 4 out of the last 5, so they're one of the hotter teams in the area heading into week 11. So.
And that's what you want too. I mean, at the end of the year, you want to be playing your best football, especially riding into playoffs. I mean, that's only going to propel you, and momentum is really, truly a thing. I mean, you're looking in season, you're looking in game momentum.
Right.
I mean, you ride that wave, and I don't know what it is. I mean, you just get that feeling, and I mean, you start getting your confidence through the roof, and that really helps a team, especially this time of season.
Yeah, just looking at some of the stuff. Sorry, Logan.
Go ahead.
Look at some of the the play-by-play here on the stats, and Wason drove down the field there in the second quarter, put the ball in the end zone, and then Brian turns right around and returns the kickoff for 87 yards for a touchdown. I mean, that's the way to answer. Your defense gives up a touchdown, and hey, all right, we'll just take care of it and put it right back in the end zone. So, we always talked about special teams, and there it is again, popping its ugly head up there. How it can change a ball game. So it's kind of impressive.
Actually, heading into the fourth quarter was really, I mean, like a defensive struggle. It looked like. So 7-7 going into the fourth, and it's one of those games that's probably really enjoyable to watch if you're a defensive fan. I guess if you're looking for high offense, this probably wasn't the game for you. But this looked like a good old, smash mouth classic football game right here.
Yep. And that's too why it was the NWO Sports Game of the Week, because I mean, you had 2 teams and it was a conference game, and again, Brian had a lot to play for, so you knew that you're going to get the best out of Brian this game. And also looking at this, I wanted to point out, I think if you're Wason, you have to establish somewhat of a run game. We've seen 2 weeks in a row, where they played Archbold and they played Brian, and they have a combined 53 rushing yards through 2 games. And I think in order to continue bettering your offense, I said it before and I'll say it again, you need to have a little bit of both rushing and passing to keep teams honest. Yep. And if one portion of your offense is not working, you at least have a backup plan. And I just feel like the last couple of weeks, Wason hasn't had that backup plan. There's 3 interceptions thrown, and I believe in the last couple of games there's been a lot of turnovers, and we talk about the turnover margin too. And if you win that and you're at the end of the game, typically you end up winning the game itself if you're ahead in that turnover battle. So that's something too. Wason's got to take care of the ball, and I think going forward, if they can run the ball a little bit and control the ball and not turn it over, I think they'll have a chance against a very good Van Wert team. But if they don't get that straightened out, they're gonna struggle, I think, week 1 in playoffs.
I mean, especially like this time of year, you never know on a Friday or deeper in the playoffs on a Saturday what weather you're going to get. So if you have a balanced attack, 60-40 pass run over a team like Wason that just is strictly mostly pass, and even Eden, for example, I mean, you should open a Friday night and you have some wet weather, and all you do is throw the ball. Obviously, that'll hinder your offense quite a bit. So, the more balanced team this time of year are probably the ones that are going to progress a little deeper into the playoffs.
And that's something too regarding like the offensive scheme of teams. I'm not saying, because honestly, there's going to be some outliers where teams may only pass or only run. Yep. But you're looking at the grand scheme of things. Typically, your teams that do have more of a balanced attack are the ones that make it down to state each year, or the Final Four at least. So let's go ahead.
Hang on, that's just looking at this. I just want to comment on the digital scout again. This is so cool because they do the play-by-play. We just talked about that a minute ago. But in the third quarter, I was just looking at the stats here. Wason got the ball first. And it's great because it literally goes play by play. So it's like you're there. But Wason had the ball first, and the very first play from scrimmage, they throw an interception.
That's tough.
But then Brian marched the ball all the way down to the 1 yard line, and Wason had a goal line stand and held him out of the end zone. So Brian didn't score. But then so Wason got the ball back, drove it back out a little bit, drove it all the way down to the Brian 13, and then it was intercepted again.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool seeing this stats. Like I said, you just read right through it. And it's like, man, that's pretty impressive actually.
Every coach in the area needs to find some tech nerd kid and pay him $25 to run digital scout every Friday because awesome. The schools that do it on a weekly basis, it's just like heaven.
It's really phenomenal. It's a win-win for everyone. Yep. I mean, fan media, whoever, just because it's instant in. Yep. Like the statistics are all instant, and you don't have to wait for them after games, and it's just so nice to see. And like Tony was saying, you could basically not be there and read through it, and it's like you were sitting there at the game watching it. So
You didn't realize that, if you're not there, you don't realize they had a goal line stand at the 1 yard line.
Right.
Now I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive to keep them out of there after turnover. So that's cool.
All right, let's move on to the next game, another NWAL matchup. Archbold at Patrick Henry, and to be honest, it stunned all of us here because we all had Archbold picked, but Patrick Henry won 20-14, and I was looking up the last time Patrick Henry beat Archbold was in 2018, and looking at this game, Patrick Henry came out with some fire, and I know it's been a couple years since this passing offense has been implemented into Patrick Henry football, but I just look, and it's so different seeing a Patrick Henry offense that goes out there and throws the ball 49 times in a game. Wow. And there was a time, honestly, when they would probably run the ball 49 times a game. So I thought that was very interesting. And then another thing, too, was you look, and Archbold was held to 62 total rushing yards in the game. So I thought that was pretty significant as well.
That's huge.
But what are your guys' thoughts on this game?
A shocker. I thought Archbold was, kind of on a roll. We all kind of knew Patrick Henry's been doing really well. They've been kind of that team that's just laying in the grass, getting things done, getting down and dirty. But, man, wasn't expecting them to pull it out against Archbold.
Yeah, I don't think anybody except for probably Coach Inselman and his staff and kids probably thought they would pull this one out. Yeah, it's very impressive win, which we'll talk to Coach Inselman later, which looking forward to that, to see what he's got to say about this game. But, wow, yeah, it's we kept looking at the score when we were giving our updates on Friday. You kept waiting for it to change, but, Patrick Henry with the huge win, really, a fourth quarter score to bring home a very probably biggest victory in years, honestly.
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive. I was just looking through the stats again through Digital Scout. Again, that's awesome. But even, you look at the stats and they're just about even. There's until you get down to, I just noticed from the third down conversions and fourth down conversions, Archbold was 2 of 11 on third down. Patrick Henry wasn't much better. They were 4 of 16. But fourth down conversions, Archbold was 0 for 6, and Patrick Henry was 5 of 8 on fourth down. So
that's impressive.
Yeah, that's a game changer there. If you can't, we always talk about Tenora trying to get off the field on third down.
Yeah.
You've got them fourth down, and you're like, okay, and they decide to go for it. They made it 5 out of 8 times.
That's impressive.
That's a gut wrenching way to lose, I suppose.
That many conversions on fourth down, that's just demoralizing for a defense. You're coming out there with the mindset, we get one more stop and we get the ball back, but no, 5 out of 8 times, that's a lot of times on defense giving up fourth downs. And props to Patrick Henry, and they had a couple good performances too. And Nash Meyer was 29 of 49, 307 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and I believe was it last week or the week before he was our player of the week. Yep. So one of the two, but nonetheless, he also had 2 rushing touchdowns. But you look at a couple wide receivers, and these kids really stood out. Landon Johnson, he's just a menace week after week, and he may be the top wide receiver in the NWAL. 9 receptions, 133 receiving yards. And then Aiden Behrman, he really stepped up this game. 9 receptions, 103 receiving yards with a receiving touchdown, and also had an interception on defense. So he's contributing on both sides of the ball. And then one other thing too with Aiden Behrman is I didn't realize he was the punter, but he had 4 punts and averaged 43.3 yards a punt, which that's huge.
Yeah, it is huge.
It's big for high school.
It is.
Once again, special teams.
And that's something we can't preach enough is how crucial special teams has been in multiple games, and especially your close games throughout the year.
Absolutely.
So, that's just amazing, especially out of a high school punter. So, you guys have any other thoughts on this game?
Yeah, look like just like Tony says, spoken like a true coach, analyzing every single stat line. But, yeah, Archbold bottled up the PH running game where they have 20 rushes for 16 yards. But yeah, Nash Meyer, not really one of his better stat games, obviously, but as far as overall clutch performance, is probably the clutch performance of the year.
And that's something too. Like obviously, your stats aren't going to be as good against a quality opponent like Archbold. Yep. Archbold's 8-2 on the year, and they've shown that they're a quality team. Yep. So
huge game by Nash, which we've talked about probably almost every week here. So.
Yeah, honestly. So.
Yeah. All right. They did what they needed to do. They held Carson Dominic under 100 yards. Just barely, had 99 yards. But then you got to shut down their running attack and force them to throw the ball. But like you said, Keith, Cade Brenner did a nice job throwing the ball too. And it's just I think the fourth down conversions, I kind of went through there in the second half. PH went for it quite a few times there and was able to complete that. And like you said, Logan, it's just kind of demoralizing to got him stopped and then
fourth down and converted.
They keep moving, keep the ball, and and sometimes we talk about sometimes the best defense is keeping their offense off the field.
It is.
There you go.
And a game like this is great for Patrick Henry to come into this. Archbold's going to be a great warm up for playoffs. So pulling out a win like that coming into playoffs really gives you momentum going into the rest of the playoff season here.
Yeah, amen.
For sure. Let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Napoleon at Bowling Green. And we kind of mentioned it before. This was a game where Napoleon was backed up into the corner, and they ended up coming out and winning 21-13 at Bowling Green. And again, this was a winner, your season's done game. And with everything on the line and in crunch time, Napoleon was finally able to pull off a win that they needed. And I thought this game, it was really nice to see quarterback Owen Espinoza toss a pair of touchdown passes to lead Napoleon to a win. And one touchdown pass was to Trey Rubenstein, and the other was to Andrew Williams. And Espinoza ended up finishing 10 of 14, 180 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns. So that's pretty impressive, especially for Napoleon losing their starting quarterback, the Wolf kid. And I believe their second string was injured too. So I think he's down to the third string, and that's very impressive for him to go out and produce in a big game like this.
Yeah. Coach Swery going on the road in a must-win to qualify for the playoffs, and you're basically your third-string quarterback, helps out like that. Yeah, that's probably a nice bus ride home.
Yeah, I mean, Napoleon, I picked against Napoleon last week. I thought maybe Bowling Green would squeak it out. It was home team advantage, home field advantage there, but they wasn't able to do it. But, it's good to see Napoleon, that's another team in a must-win, kind of like with Brian and those guys kind of, try to battle their way into the playoffs. And it's nice to see them come out swinging and work their way into the playoffs.
And that's something too. Looking at Napoleon, I know they haven't had the most successful season, and they're sitting at 4-6 right now. But for a first-year coach and Coach Swery, in order to win a game like this and show that the kids can come out and the coaching staff can come out and win a big game, and also make the playoffs too, that's huge for the program and years to come. So that was very impressive out of Napoleon. Let's go ahead. If no one has anything else, we'll move on to Antwerp at Ederton. And Antwerp ended up winning this one big, 39-0. And this win for Antwerp actually marked their first 10-0 season in school history. So they clinched the GMC championship last week, and this week they have their first undefeated regular season in school history, which is very impressive. And we got a chance to talk to Coach Hale last week, and what a great coach there. And I tell you what, we've said it again. You could talk to that guy for hours.
Absolutely.
And we were talking too. Tony had a bunch of good questions and things that we really want to point out. But again, we're kind of limited on time because this kind of keep the show right around 2 hours. So, but yeah, great coach over there. And the Archers just did their thing again and continue to be dominant. They've dominated all their opponents season long. And one thing I looked into this game is in the first quarter, the Archers came out and they stunned the Ederton Bulldogs. They jumped out to a 21-0 lead after the first quarter. So, I mean, if you're a team and you come out and you're down 21-0 in the first quarter, you kind of look at each other if you're on the losing end of that, like, what did we just get ourselves into? I mean, that's a tough start to the game. But another key point was that Ederton was without quarterback and defensive back Corey Everett's due to an injury for most of the game. And you look at that, and everyone and their brother knows Corey Everett is the main guy on that team, and not only offensively but defensively as well. So that's a huge loss for the Ederton Bulldogs. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Antwerp at Ederton game from last week?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the stats here on Digital Scout again, and did Ultimus not even play? Because Dane Scholl scored the first 3 touchdowns.
He did play. That's the bad thing about Digital Scout is because it was from Edgerton's team. Right. They just named the same kid for all the stats on Antwerp.
I was like, okay. I was kind of looking at this like, who's Dane Scholl? I've never seen this kid. They just throw in the third string quarterback to play probably the best game of the year.
You're probably looking at that, and Dane Scholl's leading the passing yards, the rushing yards, the receiving yards, and everything else.
So. Yeah, now that you say that, I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. Caden Radzik got everything when Sonora played Edgerton too. I'm like, wait a minute, Radzik didn't.
That's the only downfall to Digital Scout is if the person typing in or the team, they don't put in the names for the other side. But
first, just everybody's number one. Everybody's number one. In this case, everybody was number 2, I suppose. But it's just you come out, you you lose your starting quarterback. I mean, I looked and then Ederton had the ball first, fumbled on the first drive, and Antwerp took it right in for a score. So things like that, and like I said, then Everts goes down whenever he went down in the game, and that makes it tough. Because we talked about Everts being the heart and soul, their team, and both offensively and defensively a little bit. So that's tough loss. But again, like Keith, I was talking about, you looking at the stats, just looking at the team stats. If this is correct, Ederton time of possession was 36 minutes to Antwerp's 12, and then Antwerp obviously won 39-0. So it's like pretty awesome.
Yeah, for Ederton, I think Corey got hurt on their first series, so he basically missed the whole game. Wow. So that's kind of demoralizing if you're Ederton. All of a sudden, your leader on offense and defense, like Tony said, all of a sudden he's missing out there. You're kind of, you're just standing outside looking in, like we've never been in this situation before. So what do we do now? So
exactly.
But going off of what Logan said, we could have talked to Coach Hale for all night long. Such full of energy and so happy for his kids. I mean, couldn't find somebody more ecstatic for his kids than what Coach Hale was. So,
and I thought too, going back to Coach Hale, Tony made a great point of Coach Hale being involved with his junior high teams and younger teams. And you can speak that from personal experience. I mean, you know what it's like to coach junior high, and what are your thoughts on him knowing that? Well,
I mean, when you're coaching junior high, it's Sonora, we have a 5th and 6th grade program. So as you start coaching junior high, it's their first implementation of the high school program. We try to run what the high school runs as far as plays and that kind of stuff. And so you're trying to help the high school at that level. You're trying to teach the kids the basic offense, and the better I hate to say it like this, but the better the kids are, the more you can implement, right? Coach Hale just clicked off the record right away with his junior high kids. He knew right away he just clicked off the record that they've had for the last couple of years there. And Antwerp, we played Antwerp in 8th grade, and then we ended up tying them 0-0. But to know that record with those guys, it was really impressive to me. Shows his involvement at the lower levels, that he's keeping track. He understands what's going on down there. He's obviously got his feet in that mess too down there at the junior high level. And I don't think some schools don't do that as well. And I think it's important, and it's something that I try to implement as a high school softball coach, is being involved at the younger levels, is trying to get down there and get kids excited about the game that you want them to play, and trying to be involved in that level.
I mean, I'm sure if you're a kid at that level, either be elementary or junior high, and you see the varsity coach, so say I'm a player for Antwerp, and I see Coach Hale come over for 20 minutes just to watch, you're like, wow, Coach Hale's here. I gotta try and impress Coach Hale. This is awesome.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, I think it would be awesome to be standing there, even as a coach myself, be standing there, because at Sonora, our high school coaches, they practice, and then they're normally done before our games are over. But to have them, I don't even care if they walk right on the sideline with me. That would be awesome to have them come down there and just hey, what's going on? What's happening? What's working? And because believe it or not, we play kind of the same schedule the varsity plays. I don't remember exactly how it works, but it seems like we always play either right before the high school plays them or right after they play them. I don't remember, but if they're playing Ederton and we play Ederton, it's kind of lined up. But I tell you what, it would be neat to see him just walk right down the sideline. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Just like you said, the kids would enjoy it.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about that, because I know that's something that you caught right away.
Yeah.
I mean, Keith and I were all and AJ were all talking about that too. So. I just thought that was very impressive, and that's going to show why Antwerp's having some success the last couple of years, and I think next year they're even going to be better, especially finding out
only 2
seniors, so that's scary. So Antwerp's going to be pretty good for years to come. Let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next game here, and this was Eden at Ottawa Hills, and Ottawa Hills ended up winning this one 24-20, and this was a game that decided the TAC football championship. So Ottawa Hills were TAC champions, but it was a game that came down to the wire, and Ottawa Hills was able to pull it off. And unfortunately, Eden had some key players. I was told that Kyler Sapp, quarterback, linebacker, Cohen Hulbert, linebacker, and Wade Parrish, linebacker, were all out at some point in the second half and did not re-enter the game. And that's huge. You get 3 key defensive players like that, and at the end of the game when Ottawa Hills is driving down the field, and you just don't have those key and starters in the game to help kind of take the reins and rally the troops and get the defense to really lock down there. So that was unfortunate for Eden. But I look in 2 players for Eden that really stood out, and they have all year, were Carter Keese and wide receiver, and Caden Nestor, wide receiver. And you look at Keese, finished with 10 receptions for 163 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. And you also look, Nestor finished with 9 receptions for 122 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. And that's something, too. I know Kyler Sapp has been a star on that team at quarterback all year, especially in that type of offense. But, again, if you don't have those receivers to catch the ball and score the points, then there is no quarterback. So, but adding on to that, too, Kyler Sapp did have a tremendous game, going 21 of 34. He was 62%, 299 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. So, again, on offense, all 3 of those players played an excellent game. And then on defense, someone who kind of stood out to me, and we haven't mentioned his name before, but was defensive lineman Blake Baker. He brought the pressure, and he ended up having 2 sacks and 1 tackle for loss with 9 tackles on the game. So he was someone on that defensive front for Eden that really stepped up when the time was needed. So what are your guys' thoughts on this Eden at Ottawa Hills game?
Yeah, kind of unfortunate, like you said, about the kids getting hurt. Kind of curious as to what happened to make sure, wonder if they're going to be back this week or if it was kind of ending question. But the one thing I'm going to bring up, Logan, was we're not going to do any more call-ins, dude. You did a call-in with North Central, and they got beat up, and a bunch of kids got hurt. You do a call-in with Cohen Hulbert, I believe, didn't we? And now those guys get hurt. And
it's like the Madden cover.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's kind of like Madden jinx. So, wait, hang on. Maybe Coach Inselman doesn't want to call in today.
I guess I didn't realize that until you said something. But hey, at least Antwerp won by a pretty good margin last week.
So you talk to the coach, so maybe it's different if you talk to the coach versus the players.
Maybe, yeah.
North Central guy. It's but it's like you said with Eden and their passing attack. It can hit pay dirt at any time. So having Kyler Sapp go out, I'm sure was a big factor in the game there.
Yeah, and Eden just qualified for the playoffs at 16. I think they played Macomb.
They just barely made it in.
Played Macomb. So interesting matchup, really. I mean, obviously Macomb's one of the better teams in the region. Actually, I think they're number 1, but. If everybody's back healthy for Eden, you can never count a Coach Olin team out ever.
Yeah.
He's been around for 3 decades. He's been through everything and seen everything. So,
I think too. You kind of mentioned too with Macomb, and Macomb is very good. The only loss they have this year, I believe they won the BBC, was to Marion Local.
Yeah,
so
very impressive.
They beat some teams like I believe trying to think, Liberty Benton, some other good teams in that conference. But if Eden's going to have a shot, they got to have all those guys healthy in order to compete against a very good Macomb team. Yep. So I think it's all going to come down, and that's what we've talked about that too. The season gets long, and it's going to come down to who remains healthy, especially now in the playoffs. So that's going to be a huge question, and we'll see if Eden Bombers can stay healthy and get those guys back on the field. So,
yep.
Just kind of looking at some of the games Macomb have won. They won against Van Buren handedly. That was 66-7. Pandora Gilboa, which we've seen them quite a bit, 35-28. So that's a pretty good win for them. They played Arlington 27-20, so that was a tough game for them. Liberty Benton, they won 39-16, so they've had some pretty decent games. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for Eden this week.
Yeah, I guess it's. I guess you got 2 point of views. Like, just listen to some of the scores that AJ gave. Would you rather win every game 56-7, or would you rather have some close games to kind of wean you into the playoffs? Like last year, I mean, the Rams were so dominant over everybody. Like, there were 3/4 of the games last year where the starters played one series, and that was the start of the second half. Then they didn't see the game the rest of the. The field the rest of the game, and
that's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Right.
You like having the blowout wins, so you rest in your starters, and so they get some time to. You're not banging them up and getting them hurt. Like in this game, Eden's in here, last game of the season. You're trying to fight your way into the playoffs. Then you end up with 3 starters hurt. Yeah. But speaking like from a coaching aspect of it, I like the close games because it kind of battle tests you a little bit. Especially if you get behind in a game and you got to come back and win, you don't. So when it happens to you in the playoffs, you don't get shocked like, oh my gosh, we're behind, which I think happened to Sonora a little bit last year. They got behind and kind of.
That's what happened in the Kerry game.
Yeah, it kind of shocked them a little bit, like, oh gosh, we're trailing, and kind of I think maybe they panicked a little bit. So I would rather play some close games and be a little bit battle tested before you go into playoffs.
Definitely. Yeah, looking at the last 3 games here from Macomb, it was 52-7, 55-7, and 39-16 is a little closer, but still not no real close games. So they've had some pretty easy games the last couple weeks. So they're coming into the playoffs, like you said, well rested, healed up, but haven't really been battle tested the last couple of weeks. So it's kind of the trade off there.
Yeah, Eden's going to have a tough battle this week, especially if the kids aren't healthy yet. But
yeah, I mean, I think you guys all hit it right on the money, and those are all very valid points. And we'll talk a little bit more about it later too once we get in the game predictions. But Eden's got their hands full coming up next week. Let's move on to the next game here. Liberty Center at Delta, and you may be wondering why I threw this game in here. And Liberty Center ended up winning 51-14, but I looked, and Delta actually had a 7-0 lead after the first quarter. So I thought that was pretty crazy. But Liberty Center ended up falling with 35 uncontested points. Again, Liberty Center had 448 yards on total offense to Delta's 123 total yards of offense. Jeremiah Wolford, running back from Delta, put up 90 rushing yards and 20 carries with a rushing touchdown. And I thought that was pretty impressive considering Liberty's defensive front.
Absolutely.
And almost putting up 100 rushing yards. That's pretty talented. And then the last point I had was one interesting thing during this game, and I haven't showed you guys yet, but I'll have to show you, but they gave the ball to Owen Box at running back. So he actually got a handoff, one handoff, but he ran for 37 yards, and he absolutely trucked a kid. So he kind of got the ball. Yeah, I'll have to show you after the break here. He kind of got the ball, ran outside to the right, and hit the outside edge, and he was booking it. I was kind of impressed for him being a lineman. He was out there full speed, and a defensive back came up to try to tackle him at the legs. It did not end up good for that defensive back. Let's just say that.
It's almost like, I don't know who that poor kid was, but boy, next time just away it. Just get out of the way. You want nothing with that.
Especially not somebody like Owen Box. I mean, we've talked about him all year. He is an absolute monster, and I don't know that I would want to get in his way.
Hey, if you're Coach Moeller and you need a yard down the goal line, hey, like the old refrigerator.
Honestly, though, that's a really good threat there, especially playoff time. Like, I would say you're probably 95% chance of punching it in on the 1 yard line with him. But if you guys get the chance, there's a video going around on social media from the LC or My Sports. Their broadcast, someone screen recorded and put it out there, but it's awesome to hear that the broadcasters over there from Liberty Center really get into it. Yeah, it's an awesome clip, so I'll have to show you guys here that shortly. But you guys have any other thoughts from this Liberty Center and Delta game?
No, just Liberty Center working their way right into the playoffs. They're going to be they got the number 1 seed in the region, and for a reason, because we all agree. I think they're the team to beat in the region, and whoever matches up against them is going to have their hands full.
Yeah, the Liberty Center is just, they don't do anything fancy. They're not going to magic trick you to death. And we're just going to run the ball down your throat and just go ahead and stop us. And I don't know, Logan, did they actually set the record in the NWO? I never actually saw if they did or not. They allowed 51 points on the season.
I was curious about that too.
10 games, so I never actually saw if they.
Yeah, I don't know
if they set the record or not.
Yeah, that's something I tried looking back, and there was some information out there that they were pretty close to setting the record for least points allowed. And was it conference or was it the whole season?
I'm not sure if it was just if it was the NWAL or. It probably was, would be my guess.
But regardless, their defense has been dominant, and we saw that firsthand the first game of the season because Liberty Center had all of us thinking, what in the world did we just get our hands into? And it's going to be a long season ahead. But to find out, Liberty Center is just the real deal.
Absolutely.
And they've continued to show that week after week. So I'm excited to see. I think they have a pretty good shot at coming out of the region. So, again, we'll talk more playoff football later, but that's something I'm really excited for.
Yep.
Yeah, and Delta made the playoffs too. So Delta's in as well.
They're a playoff team.
I mean, and like you said, Logan, Wolford coming in there and putting up 90 yards against a very, very strong Liberty Center team. That's impressive itself.
And I'm sure all 90 of those yards were definitely earned because I can tell you those kids were probably hitting hard from Liberty Center and not making it easy. So
Rough.
Kind of looking back over Liberty Center's gauntlet of a season here, they've done very well against a lot of very good teams. And oddly enough, the one team that gave them the biggest trouble was Napoleon back in week 2.
Rather
They're the ones
bizarre.
that put up the most points against them. So just an interesting little fact there.
yeah, definitely. And I would think though, if you're offensive coordinator, you'd be going to look back at that Napoleon film, or if you're, especially in playoffs,
something.
you're trying to get your hands on that film to see what Napoleon was doing in order to put those points up in Liberty Center. So, that was a very good point, AJ. Last game here, and we're throwing this one in. I know it was kind of a blowout, but Keith and myself were there. But it was Tenora at Hicksville, 54-7. So, Keith, you want to start this one off?
Boy, a lot of positives. I'm going to backtrack one step. Yes. What you guys said about Tenora at Liberty Center. After that first game, with all the graduations from Tenora last year, after that week 1 performance and everything that the boys and the coaching staff has been through this year, you said that the Tenora Rams were going to be 7-3. We would have called you crazy. So kudos to the players, the coaching staff, and everybody that didn't give up after that first game and all the mid-season turmoil and whatnot. But their probably best defensive game of the season was probably against LCC. And honestly, the game against Ederton was probably second.
Yeah.
Honestly. And then last week, week 10, I think everything finally came together offensively, defensively, special teams. Dominic Graziani, boy, the last month, that kid has gone from here to here, just as far as confidence. Like last week, got the ball out of the shotgun, didn't even hesitate, just was firing the ball all over the field. I think it was 5 or 6. Most of those were in the first quarter.
Yeah.
I think he had 56 yards. Just so much confidence from Dominic. Had a heck of a scramble with a 14-yard touchdown run where he made something out of nothing. Brandon Edwards was going for looked like a record-setting game. Halfway through about 4 minutes into the game, he had 60 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
jeez.
Then he came up a little injured and never actually saw another snap, but he looked fine on the sideline. So. But overall, last week, I think Tenora finally sewed everything together, it looked like. And Jacob Bishop, 48-yarder, Logan?
I believe so,
48-yard field goal, hit the crossbar. And applause from the Ram fans on the far side. Even the Hicksville fans below us were like giving him a round of applause.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't go in, but still, for him to make it that far and almost make it, that was very impressive.
Hit the crossbar, and it's like, oh, man. That was with no wind.
Yeah, there was no wind at all, so that was all legs. So,
Which that's the second time he's hit that crossbar.
That was
on
at
a long
LCC.
shot.
Yes,
Yep.
that was a 44-yarder hit the crossbar. But yeah, the Rams are. I'm going to say playing as best that they've played all year, heading into the playoffs at the right time. Seems like everything's coming together. Coaching staff is coaching with confidence. Boy, like we said, Coach Helton, the defensive guru, taking over the offense, he's called a heck of a game the last 2-3 weeks.
And I was going to add on to that too. And I know people may say, well, Hicksville's a 2-7 ball club going in that game. Yeah, we understand that, but for them to kind of iron out all the wrinkles and like you said, Keith, Dominic Graziani has grown exponentially since that Wayne Trace game and that first snap, all the way till now and last week. And something else I really wanted to target on was the play calling from Tenora. I thought it was phenomenal Friday night just to see they set Dominic up for throws that were high completion percentage throws, and you could tell he was getting more comfortable as the game went on, and just the flow of everything. And again, I know Hicksville is a 2-7 team, but again, it was still against a varsity squad, and just everything there, offense, defense, special teams, they were all firing on all cylinders. It was great to see. I mean, other than Brandon ended up unfortunately going out, which you hate to see, like we kind of discussed earlier, especially in the last week of the regular season with players getting injured. But that's one thing that I've really wanted to see Tenora do is develop the passing game a little bit this last week going into the playoffs. Because, again, you're going to have some kind of passing attack because time and time again, if you're going to run the ball all game, teams will adjust, and they will put 9, 10, 11 guys in the box. And I don't care who you are, it's still going to be hard to run when there's no room at all. And you got to space the field out and give your running backs room to work with. So
I think the last 2 weeks especially, they've done a great job. Grady Gusweiler changing things up. Radzik caught a couple passes. Cole Anders the week before. It's nice to see a little bit of a diversified offense.
It is.
I mean, it really is.
Sounds
it
like
really is.
Sounds like they did play great. I missed it. It was out in Davenport for graduation, and that's what we kind of talked about all year is letting the Sonora's playmakers play. Yeah. It sounds like that's what they're starting to do. So, like we talked about before, I would not want to be the team that's got to play Sonora in the playoffs here because it's like, it's almost like a different team. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talked about that the very first season, very first week when Graziani came in and Eckert kind of got his bell rung a little bit against LC, and he came in threw a nice ball, and we all kind of remember looking at Logan going, "Wow, man, this would be different." And now that he's kind of got under the center and it's his ball game, it's his ball club now. You know what I mean? Yep. Eckert's not coming back when I'm taking him back out if he makes a mistake, kind of thing. And it's kind of sounds like he's growing. And that's what we need, especially from a sophomore.
Yeah. And talking about the 2 and 7, the record's not that big of a deal to me because I like to see how they're performing on a fundamental basis. Yep. Are they blocking the right people? Are they in the right zones on defense? Are they, making the right reads, that kind of stuff? Because that stuff carries a lot of weight going into a game with a good team. You can get away with a lot of sloppy football against a team that's 2 and 7. You will not get away with that sloppy football in playoffs. So to see them clean their skills up a little bit and get ready, I was hoping to see something like this back against Fairview in week 4.
I was just about to say that because that was a game. You talk sloppy football. That was definitely a game Tenor got a win with sloppy football, but this was not the case against Hicksville.
Yeah, so it's really good to hear that they're starting to clean things up and starting to look sharp at absolutely the best time they possibly could going into week 1 of playoffs.
Yep. No staff issues like you didn't have the kids. Everybody knows what their job is now. There's no, hey, looking back at coaches, what am I doing? It's every kid knows exactly what they're doing.
And that's part of the thing. It's one of the things I always teach. I've always taught remember 3 words. If you don't remember anything else, do your job.
Yes.
And let the kids next to you do their job. And if everybody's doing their job, then you should be, you can be successful.
Yeah. Coach Schleicher said he'd done a fantastic job for like everything that he was dealt, kind of. So.
And I like that.
Kudos to him.
Oh, definitely. I totally agree. And Tony, that was a phrase that we said all the time at the University of Findlay when I was playing football there, was do your job. Yep. Because sometimes people try to go out of their way. They try to do too much and they wouldn't complete exactly what they were coached to do. And you'd end up with either turnovers or bad plays or something bad would happen. But if you just went out, you do what you're coached to do, you do what your position was supposed to do, good results and good things happen. So
absolutely.
That's one phrase I like a lot, do your job. And that's if you're a team out there or a player or coach, definitely preach it to your kids. So, All right. Well, that concludes our game recaps here, but we're going to go ahead and take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. 3Chord is a family-owned and operated business who offers the highest quality embroidery, screen printing, sign and promotional items to customers in Northwest Ohio at competitive prices. Locations in Archbold, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Check them out at 3chord.com. That's THREECORD.com. For any of your auto body or collision needs, be sure to check out Bat & Stevens Body Shop, voted the #1 body shop in Northwest Ohio by Crescent News readers. Give them a call today at 419-497-3111 to schedule your free estimate. Check out Tenora Rams Live. Live events broadcast on YouTube and post-game results, articles, schedules, and more can all be found on tenorarams.com. Feel free to look up their Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages as well. Jimenez Basketball Academy strives to create an atmosphere to cultivate basketball fundamentals in Northwest Ohio youth athletes, offering one-on-one sessions, group sessions, speed and agility training, and much more. Located in Pettisville, Ohio, call Coach Jesse today at 419-551-8105. Back on the NWO Sports Podcast, Logan Bailey here with Keith Brown, Tony, and AJ Fairchild, and we're looking at Player of the Week from Week 10. And again, a lot of good performances here this week, and you're going to want to hear some of the stat lines because some of them are pretty impressive. So let's go ahead and we'll kick it off. I'll announce the players and the finalists, and we'll kind of decide who is the player of the week and who are some other people that were really catching our eye from this list. So I'll start it off. Quarterback, Ayersville, Blake Honstein, 7 of 7, 100% completion percentage, 114 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 8 carries, 121 rushing yards, averaging 15.1 yards a carry, and 1 rushing touchdown. Running back from Ayersville, Owen Berner, 12 carries, 93 rushing yards, averaged 7.8 yards a carry, and he had 3 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback, Antwerp, Carson Altimus, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns. Unfortunately, we did not have the stat line for the yardage and everything else. But nonetheless, he put up 5 touchdowns against Ederton, pretty good Ederton team. Quarterback Brian, Jace Kepler, 9 of 12, 75% completion percentage, 100 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 22 carries for 135 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown, which that's pretty impressive in a win or go home type game to make the playoffs. Running back Columbus Grove, AJ Schaefer, 15 carries, 170 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 3 receptions for 57 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Very impressive performance out of him. Next player, quarterback from Holgate, Xavier McCord. He was 15 of 20, 75% completion percentage, 449 passing yards, 7 passing touchdowns. He had 9 carries for 138 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns for a total of 10 touchdowns for the game, which I don't know if I've ever heard of anyone scoring 10 touchdowns in a game. I know it's 8-man, but still to score 10 touchdowns in a game is impressive. Wide receiver from Holgate, Dylan Bacher, 5 receptions, 170 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. Running back from Montpelier, Brennan Friend, 20 carries, 230 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Patrick Henry Nashmeyer, 29 of 49, 59% completion percentage, 307 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback from Eden, Kyler Sapp, 21 of 34, 62%, 299 passing yards, and 3 passing touchdowns. Wide receiver, Eden Carter Keese, 10 receptions for 163 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. A couple other players here. Wide receiver, Patrick Henry, Aiden Behrman, 9 receptions, 103 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. He had an interception on the defensive side of things, and he also had 4 punts for 43.3 yard average. So he was playing well all around on the field. Last player here, quarterback from Evergreen, Colton Robertson, 15 carries, 122 rushing yards. He was 8 of 9 passing, 113 passing yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. So, after a mouthful of all these players and performances, who wants to start off on some players they were kind of looking at for player of the week?
I was kind of looking at Nashmeyer again this week, 307 passing yards. That's incredible, especially in a game where it's needed. Going against Archbold there, it was another clutch performance that we talked about that a little bit earlier. So to see him put up 307 passing yards in a game like that, that's awesome.
Yep. And the Ayersville boys, Honstein and Berner, getting hot at the right time. Very impressive performance by them. And as Logan said, Montpelier, Brennan Freed, nice game by him. But Xavier McCord, it's hard to go wrong with those stats. Just kind of pop off the page.
Yeah, Xavier McCord just blew it up. But, I always wonder how those guys get as far as recruiting wise. How do coaches look at an 8-man, player
right.
versus a 11-man as college coach? I mean, you're throwing up stats like that week after week. It's I know he hasn't done that week after week, but still throwing up some impressive stats. But I don't know.
It's probably just, hey, this is a talented kid. We're going to just put him wherever, assume he can adapt.
Yeah. But I agree with AJ Nashmeyer. I mean, like Logan mentioned earlier, throwing the ball 49 times. I mean, that's like that's like a pro game.
There's some years where Coach Inselman probably didn't throw the ball 49 times for the year.
It's pretty impressive there. And like I said, it was kind of not a must-win game for PH, but definitely one that shook up the region as far as standings, I believe, and kind of changed some things up with Archbold taking that loss. But and Kyler Sapp, 299 yards. I know that said he was injured. I'm not exactly sure when he was injured in the second half, but, it's another impressive night by him. But like Keith said, Xavier McCord has just blew it up.
I think personally for me, a couple players that stood out were running back from Columbus Grove, AJ Schaefer. And I know we've always talked about him being good as a linebacker, but 15 carries, 170 rushing yards, throwing a couple rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. That was pretty impressive out of him. Again, from Holgate, Xavier McCord. When you score 10 total touchdowns in a game, that's quite a few. So
That's a lot.
And Holgate hung up 78 points in a game, so that was pretty impressive. Another athlete that I was looking at was quarterback Brian Jace Kepler. He put the team on his back, and he went to business, and he did pretty well. So those are some guys I was looking at. Tony, were you going to say something?
No,
Gotcha.
I agree. Jace Kepler may have actually literally put the team on the back and rushed there for 135 yards. Helped Brian to the win.
But anyhow, we ended up talking off air, and we decided that the player of the week from week 10 for NWO Sports is going to be quarterback from Holgate, Xavier McCord. And when you throw for 449 passing yards and 7 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns and 138 rushing yards, and that's quite a bit of offense from one guy. And I would say that's definitely worthy of a NWO Sports Player of the Week. So, again, congratulations to Xavier McCord from Holgate. And at the end of the season, the Player of the Week will receive a plaque sponsored by Bat and Stevens Body Shop. So congratulations again to him. And for all you players on the list, like we always say, if you're on the list or not on the list, go out there and give it your all every week, and hopefully you end up on here. So we definitely like giving some of the better performances in the area recognition they deserve. All right, let's move on to the next section here. Power rankings, and this is the power rankings for the end of the regular season. We won't do another power rankings until postseason and everything is concluded. So this is just the end for the regular season. So I'll go ahead and I'll list the final ranking for regular season, and the guys will roast me, so or agree with me. So that does happen occasionally. So I'll start here at number 27, Fairview. Number 26, Hilltop. Number 25, Paulding. Number 24, Hicksville. Number 23, Swanton. Number 22, Montpelier. Number 21, Evergreen. Number 20, Ottawa Glandorf. So thoughts on this group here?
I think you nailed it. Yep. That's about right.
Yep, I agree. Pretty accurate.
Yep, right on.
Yeah, and that group, I believe, has stayed pretty much the same, consistent over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So
a little bit of movement in there.
A little bit of movement, but still primarily the same. So
it's good to see Coach Robinson and Montpelier three wins. Even though 3 wins doesn't seem like a lot, you're still building for the future. Yeah. And a couple of schools we saw, Paulding, probably one of the harder hitting teams we saw all year. Even Hicksville last week, Coach Lucas still had those kids playing hard for the Aces.
Yep. And I think that's too. I know it's a down year for all those programs, but again, you just got to build off this year and continue going towards the right direction and getting the kids to go out and play hard is the big thing. And I think if you can do that when you do have a losing season, I think that's going to help for years to come. So let's move on to the next section here. 19 Crestview, number 18 North Central, 17 Lipsick, 16 Napoleon, and 15 Wayne Trace. So thoughts on this group here? A little bit of a change here.
Yeah, and North Central dropping down. We talked about that a little bit. I had some injuries and then quit at halftime. That's kind of disappointing, but wasn't there, so I don't know what all was going on. So, but yeah, I think you got it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Tony. Crestview is one of those teams that was hot, probably in our top 10 first month, and then all of a sudden, I don't know. I'm not sure if it had injuries or whatnot, but it seemed like the bottom fell out. And Lipsick, much needed victory over Crestview last week. So
I was just thinking the same thing about Napoleon against
it's true.
Bowling Green there. Yep.
Yep.
A couple big wins for those two teams to help move them up a little bit.
Yeah, I remember Wayne Trace only had 2 wins, and all of a sudden just bang, bang, bang. They come out and ended 5-5.
Yep.
And made the playoffs too, didn't they?
Yeah. So that's very impressive too, and that's the first time under Coach Holden that Wayne Trace made the playoffs. So in just his second year, so that's good to see out of the Wayne Trace Raiders. Let's move on to the next group here. Number 14, Eden. Number 13, Ederton. Number 12, Delta. Number 11, Wason. So thoughts here?
Yeah, I just hope that Corey Everett for Ederton is healthy for the week for them. Pretty accurate as far as rankings. I would agree with all those.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Wason is the one I'm not sure. I mean, they just kind of skidded here at the end, kind of came in and, they got hot, and then, when you want to get hot at the end of the season, they kind of went, they're skidding out of control right now.
Quarterback change, to Trey Parsons, they were pretty hot, and then the last couple of weeks, they kind of put the brakes on a little bit for a little struggling again. So
you wonder maybe a little bit, teams didn't have a lot of looks at Trey Parsons when he first came in, so they didn't have a lot of looks at him. And then after he got a few games under his belt, now they get game film on him. So like maybe it was, maybe that was something to do with it.
All right, let's look at the top 10 here. Breaking the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is Brian, number 9, Sonora, number 8, Ayersville, number 7, Patrick Henry, number 6, Defiance. So thoughts on this group in the top 10 here?
Good group of teams.
Yeah.
Like Keith mentioned earlier, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Sonora's going to come out and be 7-3, I mean, I think we were all kind of looking at maybe Sonora's going to be like more around the 5-5 team, and but impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, I think with the changes Tenora has had over the last week or two here, way they're firing on all cylinders now. I'd like to see some of those games they had lost replayed. I don't know if the Liberty Center game would have gone any different, because Liberty Center is just unstoppable. But the game against Antwerp, game against Ayersville, how would those games have gone differently? Yeah. Because the Antwerp game was the last
right on the last play, right?
Last play, and then Ayersville, that was a pretty good game as well. So just to see how those games would go if everybody was firing on all cylinders there. So
Ayersville's another team that we didn't talk about much at the beginning of the season, and here they are at 7-3, cracked into they're in the top 10, and it's see what they can do here in the playoffs.
Yep.
That's something too. I feel like you kind of started that. You always kept your eye on Ayersville and were kind of mentioning them off to the side. They really picked up some steam as the season went on, and they ended up proving to be a pretty good team and a contender in all their games. So
they were just quietly in the shadows there for a while, and all of a sudden they popped to the front.
Let's look at the top 5 here. Coming in at number 5 is Columbus Grove, number 4 Archbold, number 3 Antwerp, number 2 Van Wert, and number 1 Liberty Center. So thoughts on the top 5 here?
I think the move between Defiance and Columbus Grove is probably right. Columbus Grove is probably the top 5 team. Defiance, but the rest of them I think are still spot on. I guess we'll see with Archbold, losing last week, but could be a fluke and see what they do the rest of the way.
Yep. I agree with those. Pretty accurate.
All right. Well, if no one has anything else, that is going to conclude our power rankings for the end of the regular season. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and then we'll move on into some of our favorite segments of the podcast. So stay tuned. Fairchild Family Chiropractic aims to help families to get better together in the least invasive way possible. Dr. Fairchild focuses on the neck using the Blair technique and Palmer package, adjusting to correct spinal misalignments. Located in Defiance, Ohio. Call Dr. Fairchild today at 419-576-5070 to schedule an appointment. Northwest Ohio Basketball hosts premier basketball tournaments for boys in grades 3 to 8 in the area. Upcoming tournaments are right around the corner. Give them a call today at 419-283-5296 or check out their website at nwoball.com. Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty is a top real estate agent in Northwest Ohio. Crystal's compassion and enthusiasm allow her to find that special property or house just for you. Located in Bryan, Ohio, give her a call today at 419-799-1243. Welcome back to the NWO Sports Podcast. Logan Bailey here, and we're going to go ahead and start our call-in section. And today we have a great head coach on the show with us today, and that would be head coach of the Patrick Henry Patriots, Bill Inselman. So thanks for coming on the show, Coach.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, first I want to go ahead and congratulate you on your huge win last week, and want to ask, what does it mean to get a big win against a very good Archbold team and a team that Patrick Henry, I believe, has not beaten since 2018?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a much-needed win would probably be the best way I could describe it. We started out 4-1, and we had hoped we would be that, knowing that the meat of our schedule would be the middle and latter half of the season. And sure as world, we had 3 straight losses. We looked good at times in those 3 losses, but really they were lopsided games. And then we had our back to the wall. We were 4-4 with 3 straight losses. We had a tremendous effort against Delta. And then, as you mentioned, last week against an 8-1 Archbold team, we come out and played inspired football. So it means a lot to beat a team with just 1 loss. It gives us confidence, momentum, and that's what we need right now.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree. I would say you guys are pretty hot at this point in the season. And you kind of touched on it earlier about your kids and your team being inspired. And us on the podcast, we've kind of referred to your team as a team that just continues to go work week after week and is a very blue collar type team from us looking on the outside in. I feel like just when you think Patrick Henry is down, they come right back at you. And we've seen it during the year. And I mean, you kind of touched on it too. You hit a little bit of a slump, but now you guys are playing some of the best football of the year. And it's definitely at the right time now going into the playoffs. So my question for you is, where does that hard work mentality come from on your team?
Well, I wish I could answer that and tell you for sure. But I think a lot of it is I just give credit to the kids for believing in us coaches and sticking with things. I will say that, as far as areas of improvement, our pass protection on the offensive line has just improved so much. And we knew we had a good receiving core going into the season. And as our young line, inexperienced line developed, and I just want to give the players credit for believing in us coaches and sticking with it. And we've had some excellent senior leadership as well.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And especially, we kind of touched on it earlier. I mean, there was a point in time when you were coaching Patrick Henry that I think we saw Nash Meyer threw the ball for about 49 times. And I feel like there was a point that you guys would probably maybe threw the ball 49 times in a year and you were used to rushing the ball. But that's great to see that you've been able to develop, especially on the offensive line side of things.
That's right. 2 years ago or last year, we went to this spread offense, and you're right. We probably threw the ball maybe average 15 times a game, mixing things up over my previous 28 years. But the last 2 years, we've gone to a spread offense. This year, we've added a lot of tight end sets with 3 wide receivers. And, it's something, to be honest with you, it was new for us coaches. And I think that at the same time that we had to learn things to pass them on to the kids. And, that's one thing I've learned in my 30 years as a head coach. I've gone up against coaches that are wing T, coaches that are spread teams, and West Coast. The bottom line is it's what you know and how you get it to your kids. And I think last year was not just a learning curve for the players, but us coaches as well. I think we're both maybe starting to get the feel for the spread offense more right now.
Yeah, Coach, I think you hit it. You spoke like a true head coach for someone that's had 30 plus years of experience. And I tell you what, I just really appreciate listening to all your interviews and talking to you. I really enjoy how you have an outlook on things and believe you truly are one of the best coaches around in Northwest Ohio. And I just really appreciate that out of you. And the next question going into that is, you've been a coach for many years, and I believe you probably have some of the most of experience in Northwest Ohio as a football coach. What is it that continues to drive you to keep coaching at this stage in your career?
Well, I've always really loved coaching with young kids. And that's always been an inspiration for me. And I'll tell you what has really kind of been really neat the last couple of years. I got a lot of young men on my staff that I had the opportunity to coach under me at Patrick Henry. That being said, I've started to delegate more responsibilities, and it's been really neat watching my young assistant coaches grow as well. And we've got I've got 3 guys on my staff now that have been defensive coordinators at one time in their coaching career. And it is just really neat to sit back and listen to them, game plan, and feed off each other. I also have 2 assistants where I've turned over, about half the play calling with, and they're taking and running with us. And the other thing I like, it gives me time then in the formations that I call plays. As the game goes on, I get more chance to study what the defense and opponent's doing to us. Because before, when I called all the plays, it just seems like a lot of times I never had enough time to sit back and analyze during the game. So it's been kind of inspiring for me to watch my young assistants take on more responsibility and run with it, and they're doing a tremendous job.
That's amazing. I can't say anything else. That's 100% pure gold right there, and that's just awesome to hear it come from you. So, guys, here back at the podcast, got any questions for Coach Inselman?
Yeah, I've got one, Coach. You mentioned you went to the spread. Did you do that based on the athletes that you had, or was it just kind of a, hey, it's time to make a change and open up our offense a little bit?
It was mainly because of the type of talent we had. That's a great question. We have probably as much depth at the wide receiver this year as I've ever had, and that was the big reason. Also, we're getting to be a smaller school. We used to graduate, maybe upper 80s, 90s at Patrick Henry in every class. We're down now to the upper 50s.
Oh, geez.
So our numbers are just not what they used to be. We don't have as many linemen. Gone up against your Archbolds and Wasons and Bryans, Liberty Center. They've just got more kids and bigger kids. So we felt that to fit around the talent we have and the type of kid that we're getting there right now, we just felt that going to that spread offense fit them better.
Yeah, that's great. Sometimes you see that as coaches, and you've been around for a long time, as Logan mentioned, and you see coaches get kind of stuck in their ways and not adapt. And sometimes you just got to adapt based on. I always call it my jackrabbits. If I got a bunch of jackrabbits, I got to let them run. So that's good to see that you made that change to adapt to the playmakers that you have.
Yeah, thank you very much. And any coach will tell you, you can do all the X and O you want. If you don't have that talent, the X's and O's are going to beat you most of the time. So we've been blessed with some good talent.
Yeah, amen.
Keith?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions for you, Coach. First, thanks for coming on. I mean, boy, yeah, when you see your name, it's just nothing but first class. Mine's more of, I guess, a couple longevity questions. What's the biggest change that you've seen from when you first came in the early 90s to like today's game?
Oh, good question. I would say probably two things. If you look at the style of game that's being played, it is so much more open now. When I first started, you had names like Rex Lindgren, Dave Hansberger, John Downey, Cliff Height, Mark Emmons. These days, the sport has really evolved more progressive and open-minded. And I think that's part of the reason I had to adapt as well. Probably the biggest change I've seen maybe in players, which is one of the biggest things that I keep going back to, less and less kids are willing to put the time and effort into it if they don't see immediate results. That is probably the biggest change I've seen. Now, one thing I want to make clear, kids put as much time or more into sports now than they did when I first started coaching and when I played, okay? There's just so much time commitment to every sport. But that being said, it just seems more and more that if a kid isn't playing their sophomore year, they just don't want to put time and effort into it. When I first started at PH, we used to have kids that would play all 4 years and be happy, and their parents were satisfied if they played 1 year, okay, and paid their dues. Kids want to see instant gratification now, and I'm seeing that more and more. And if they don't get it, they just don't put the time and effort into it, and that's hurt our numbers as well.
Yeah, well, great. That's a great answer. I agree with everything you just said. And last question for you, Coach, is what's the most intimidating venue that you've ever taken your team into in your 30 years of coaching?
I would say it definitely has to be Liberty Center. That's one of the greatest rivals there is in Northwest Ohio. And when I first started coaching and having to go to Liberty Center, I was intimidated. And if the head coach is intimidated, I can only imagine what the players were like. And Rex Lindgren had just a dominant program, and it was intimidating to play there. I'll never forget what that was like playing. What that's like playing Liberty Center. It's just a great venue and a great community, and football is king there. And that is definitely without doubt the most intimidating place that I've had to coach over my years.
Yeah, thank you, Coach.
You're welcome.
Hey, Coach, this is AJ here. Just one thing that you had talked about earlier is you really love seeing how your assistant coaches have grown and evolved along with you and along with the team. And I always remember a quote that leaders make leaders, leaders don't make followers. With that being said, seeing some of the stats and how Nash Meyer has kind of taken the lead in more ways than just one, how has he helped build other leaders on your team?
Well, Nash is a leader by example. He just demands more of himself than I would ever demand from him. And I think if you really get down to it, that is the number one thing people respect. That when a person gives the effort on their own, that's leadership. And Nash, you never have to ask anything of him. He is willing to do anything for the team, and that has carried over. And if it means running the ball, it means throwing the ball. And then here's another thing that my assistant coach is a great idea. Nash is a very physical kid. He's 195 pounds. And they said, hey, coach, let's try him on defense a little bit. See if that helps maybe playing both sides of the ball. And I really think that he has really owned up to that. He loves playing defense. And I'm not sure if there's any correlation to it, but I really do believe that him just being on the field, going defense, right to offense, maybe is less time to sit and think and worry, when you're sitting there just waiting for the ball on offense. And he is just more excited. And he's a very intense and physical kid. And I've seen his play on the offensive side improve as he's gotten play on the defensive side. And I think that's really neat.
That's awesome, Coach. Thank you very much.
All right, Coach. Well, I think that's all we have here. I mean, honestly, we could talk to you all day long.
Absolutely.
But again, I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show. You're definitely a class act, and you're definitely one for a lot of these younger coaches in the area to definitely look up to. And even as a former player and playing at the next level, you're definitely one of the greats in Northwest Ohio. And again, want to say thanks for coming on the show, and wish you good luck in the playoffs in the first round.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yep. Thank you, Coach.
Take care, Coach.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Well, that concludes our call, and I tell you what a great guy.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, just to hear his responses, that's spoken like a Hall of Fame coach right there, and he is deserving of that 110%.
And someday he will be. I mean,
for sure,
there's no doubt.
I tell you, there's a question I was going to ask him, and maybe I should hold off air. But I was going, what's your longevity? You're training all these new guys. Is there any plans in the near future of maybe finally walking away? I don't know, but he'll be missed if and when he does decide to walk away. I mean, he's a coach that knows to adapt. Your play calling to basically what you've got dealt. I mean, and like you said, we talked about earlier in the season when you have small schools like Tenor or PH, you get 40 kids and you get dealt what you get dealt. Hicksville, is another one. You don't necessarily always get, like he mentioned, the big kids that can block up front and just pound the ball.
Exactly.
So if you don't adapt as a coach when you have that kind of personnel. You're going to struggle for a couple of years. It's no different than, in my opinion, if you have a spread offense and you don't have anybody that can catch the ball. I mean, you're going to suffer until you get playmakers. So, just absolutely fantastic that he realized that and made that switch.
Yes. And especially after like 29 years of smash mouth football, making a change that's so drastic like that. That's awesome to see.
You could just picture like Coach Inselman like in the corner of his basement, like spread for dummies or something. You know what I mean? It's like, what is this? This is foreign. I don't know what this stuff is.
Think about the water boy.
Kidding,
the water boy coach over there kind of thing. Oh, what am I going to do?
But he kind of self-answered. And one of the questions I had for him was like Patrick Henry being one of the smaller, probably the smallest school in the NWOAL. Like how do you go against like your Archbolds and even Liberty Center being basically the same size of school, I think, but just the amount of kids that go out is just doubled.
Yeah.
So
and I think, too, just to hear his responses were pure gold. And I felt like it was almost going to be, it could have been a church service because I could have kept on saying amen to every single one of those statements. And that's something, too. I agreed with him 100% on everything. And it was spoken like a coach who's truly had 30-plus years experience. And just to hear his wisdom come out, that was just, it almost gave me goosebumps just to hear his comments on all the questions we had. So
absolutely, definitely the experience showed, definitely.
Unofficially, but perhaps officially, what I jotted down earlier was he is 247 and 96.
Wow.
Overall,
impressive.
In his coaching
Very
career.
impressive.
So
Very impressive.
72% winning percentage.
But again, Coach I, as a lot of people call him, class act coach, class act person. I just can't say enough good things about him. So I'm glad we got him come on the show and pick his brain a little bit. So
we're spoiling everybody here. We got Coach Hale, Coach Inselman.
I know we've had a couple good coaches and players too,
great.
and so that's been awesome here. I really like this segment
That's
a lot,
awesome.
and I think a lot of the fans are liking it too. So
learn a lot from
definitely. And that's like, too, if you're a young coach out there, listen to what he's saying and take it and run with it, because that man's had a lot of success and he knows what he's talking about. So
I know. As a coach myself, I'm listening and absorbing, trying to take that in.
And that's something you don't even necessarily have to be a football coach.
Right.
I mean, just to hear his wisdom and the way he goes about things. I mean, you could benefit from softball, baseball, whatever sport you want. So that's a great interview there. All right, let's go ahead. I'm sure everyone's been waiting. That's the hot takes. So we've got quite a few this week, and they're good ones. So, of course, we're going to start it off. And we're kind of talking, some of these are kind of like a comic relief during the podcast. And this first one, it is, who is the best esports athlete of the group? I got to put my cash on Logan. Follow-up quote on this was, I assume, though, that Keith would need Nintendo Tecmo Bowl or perhaps Pong to secure a win here. Perhaps ColecoVision, is that correct, Keith?
ColecoVision.
I didn't even know about that one. So I don't know. Since he threw my name out there, I honestly haven't even played. I do have an Xbox One, I will admit that, but I haven't played, honestly, since I've been in college. Ever since I've been out, adult life hits you, and you don't have as much time to play video games. Yeah. But I do enjoy playing a game of Madden or whatever here and there. So I don't know, Keith. What do you think?
As I posted on Twitter to our Mr. Michael Hearn, thank you for the question. As always, keeping us on our toes. I can tell you probably one of the last video games I played, as I said, was probably the late 80s. And I'm God's honest truth, was an old Commodore 64. My mother got me and my brother for Christmas, and Tony.
The old floppy disk.
Put the old 5-inch floppy disk, and we played that thing during the wintertime all the time. Like micro league baseball, micro league football.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm experts at that. And, of course, this is... like 40 years ago, it's probably the last time I played video games. So I
still have a stack of Madden games. Sega. Remember Sega? Yes. I still have the Madden. I still have those at home. There's probably 4 or 5 of them stacked up there. The Madden games, Sega games. It just now you play it. It's honestly, I want to go back and play them because the graphics are so. I mean, the kids nowadays don't even understand. It's like they play those things and they joke. I mean, I remember playing the little football game handheld thing where you just clicked up and down, ran forward. You could play. Oh my God, you could play it in the car. Until the 9-volt battery ran dead. But,
before we got the Commodore 64, which Tony probably remembers coming over, we had Atari. Where we had the one-on-one basketball. You had one guy on each team, little blocks, and you shot the basketball, which was basically shooting a block.
Yeah, remember. Yep, shooting that. I remember playing. Remember the World Games or something where you had to run the joystick back and forth.
Got a blister right here.
Get a blister in your hand, run the joystick back and forth so you get your character running as fast as you can, doing barrel jumping or some stupid stuff. Oh, my gosh. The old school games versus the new school games. New school games, man, you got like 18 buttons. Back then you had one button.
Well, sometimes you walk into somebody's house, you're just visiting for holidays or whatever, and you think there's a real game on TV, and they're just playing a video game.
Honestly,
you can't even tell if it's a video game or real.
I can't tell you how many times on the holidays my grandpa would walk in the room, and he'd be surprised to see the football game on TV, and I was like, no, this is just an Xbox game. So the graphics are crazy, not like you guys said for games. But AJ, do you have any input?
I'll tell you what. One of the first games I ever remember playing was I think it was called Blitz. I think it was like
NFL Blitz
94 or something like that. Where that was like one of those really violent football games where like they pick people up and body slam them. That's how you tackle. Like that was, and the graphics it was pretty rudimentary back then for compared to what we have nowadays. But it's been a long time since I've played Madden, but it's always one of those fun games to pick up once in a while.
It is.
You watch them play. Like now, they play they actually play it professionally. These guys
they play for big money.
Yeah, they play for money. They have like a Super Bowl and all this stuff. And you watch the videos, like Logan, like you were saying. You watch these guys play these games, and you're like, my gosh, the video, the graphics are. It's like you're throwing. I mean, it's like a real person.
I think a lot of colleges offer that as a course now, and I think ESPN too actually televises that quite a few times during the year.
Well, I think they give out scholarships now for esports now, which is crazy to think. So.
Unreal.
Definitely times are changing. So
Yes.
You know, it wouldn't even,
Mr. Hearn.
It wouldn't even be a bad thing for that kind of stuff as like a quarterback on some downtime to play, because you're still, if you're really into it, you can still read defenses and things like that and call audibles. Like it's, it's a video game, but it still kind of helps with some of those skills a little bit.
I tell you what, though, during fall football camp going into college, I mean, I tell you what, video games were a blessing in disguise because it got your mind off. I mean, you'd go for what, I don't even know, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, and any break you got in between, you're either sleeping or playing video games. I feel like because you couldn't do anything else. So that definitely got me through the hard times at camp. So that was definitely a stress relief there. So.
Awesome.
Well, and yeah, like Keith said, got to thank Michael Hearn for that one. So he's always got some good hot takes there.
Always.
Let's move on to the next hot take. Another one that's kind of addressing us here at the podcast. Tony beats Logan in the Oklahoma drill. So,
Whoa, boy.
So should we explain to those who don't know what the Oklahoma drill is?
Probably should.
So. Essentially, basically, you line up one-on-one, mano-a-mano, and you just basically whoever can manhandle the other guy and get by. So, Tony, what are your thoughts?
Maybe back in my day, Logan, but I don't know, buddy. You're a big boy. I don't know. That would be interesting, but I don't know that I could throw Logan around too easy.
I think it's safe to say we're at that point in our lives. We're not going to try this one out. I don't think it's worth getting anyone injured. I said maybe the 100-meter dash we could do, but Oklahoma drill between us, I think that's kind of out of the question.
Hell, I'm scared enough to run the 100-meter dash, let alone get out there and get thrown around by Logan.
We were all talking about that after I forget which game it was. I think it was against Ayersville or something like that. It was back before my dad and I were gone, talking about how much stretching we're going to have to do before that 100-meter.
I do like Keith's idea with that was just run at 50 at a time.
Split it up.
Should place side bets on over/under of who pulls a hammy during it. So
that's probably greater than picking out who's going to win.
Right? Yeah, honestly,
the race.
Yeah, I'd be number one on that.
I always think we think about doing the 100-meter. You watch these videos, these guys racing down the sidewalk, and somebody always like knee buckles or something. They completely face plant. I'm just like,
oh man. Yeah, I could only imagine. Shoot, but again, we're still contemplating if we could raise some money for something. That'd be pretty cool. We just have to do some logistics and thinking about that. Yeah. So let's move on to the next one. A couple more realistic ones. So we had to get those out of the way. So it gives a little bit of comedy during the podcast. The next one is, what does the future of Tenor football hold? And this was asked a couple weeks ago. And to be honest, I don't think anyone knows right now. I think it's still pretty open-ended, and obviously they ran into some issues this season, or this in the middle of the season, but obviously times are changing, and times are changing for Tenor football. So what are you guys' thoughts on this hot take?
My thoughts are it's going to depend on how we do here. I mean, they've been progressing and looking better every week, according to what you guys said this past week. And, if the coaching staff is doing the right things, then, I think they go out and they look to pick up maybe one or two people to join that staff and make, solidify it, and they go on down the road. I mean, if Schleicher's doing a great job if he wants that job, and if the school board likes him and he wants it, I think it's probably his to lose at this point.
Yeah, I agree with everything Tony said. Obviously, it's up to the school board and Coach Rutter and whatever direction they want to go. That's the direction they want to go. But as we said earlier, like Coach Schleicher and staff, I mean, hats off to them. I mean, you couldn't have thrown a bigger mess into their laps and come out so far smelling like roses.
Yeah.
Heading into week 11. So.
Well, yeah, hats off to the players that are still there that can let this kind of go, get, I guess, out of their vision for the games here, because things like that can really weigh on a team.
Staying focused,
and staying focused is definitely hard. So kudos to them.
Yep.
And as far as the future, Tenor is going to graduate quite a few seniors. I mean, if that's what they're getting at, Tenor is going to graduate quite a few seniors this year, and they're going to have to rebuild a little bit next year. But it's kind of good to see. We talked about our linebacking crew is still young; they're still juniors. They'll be back next year. Seeing Dominic Graziani get in there and get some snaps and get some big time game reps in is only going to help him for next year. And we'll have to see what they do with the running back positions and stuff like that.
And a couple of times, we've seen Cooper Farrell rip off a couple nice runs. You're seems like prepping Grady Gusweiler for the running back position next year. I mean, that's just personal opinion. I mean, that's not fact, but But yeah, we'll see. I mean, Sonora football. You see Sonora football. They're kind of like Patrick Henry football. They're one of the top programs in the area for the past 2-3 decades. I mean, so it kind of.
You know, that's you saying that, Keith, is something that brought up something that we talked about between our junior high staff. It's, you see, we mentioned Hicksville and Fairview, and you see teams kind of ebb and flow, right, based on the athletes they have. Sonora is really not one of those programs. Sonora's programs is kind of, even in their down years, they're 7-3. That's a down year for Sonora. 6-4, but you don't really see Sonora go down and play it.
No, I think
2-win season.
Like the mass graduation when Logan's his class graduation. I think that year afterward may have been a sub 500 year, but yeah, very very seldom you see a Sonora football team under 500. So,
I think looking at it too, if this is directed towards the coaching situation, I think there's one of two routes you go. Either stick with the guys on staff, or you go out and you look from the outside. And I don't think. I mean, I'm not saying the guys on staff are bad, but especially with the situation that was going on and stuff like that, It's like, do you almost look from the outside in and look for a new fresh start and get some new blood in? But still, you can retain the guys on staff, because I'm not saying those guys are bad by any means, because there are some very good coaches on the Tenora football staff. But I think that's the question that is posed coming up in the off season, and I think. If you're looking, you better start looking soon, because especially a lot of new coaches were hired this season. So I feel like your options are limited at this point.
And anymore, like you hear Coach Inselman kind of delegate everything, which is what you have to do nowadays. Like to be even a high school, which Tony knows, like even to be a high school football coach, it just requires so much time and energy.
It does.
It's almost a 365-day-a-year job anymore, with all the off-season weightlifting. Every like Coach Inselman said, like it's almost hands-on everything anymore. And as he said, he's delegating things, and it's probably much easier on him. But yeah, to be a high school coach, really at any level, just requires a lot of time. Like the 80s and 90s, you didn't have all the fancy gadgets. You show up to practice, you practice, you got your notepad out, and you watch some grainy game film and, jotted down a couple notes. But now you have everything, digitally this, digital that. Hey, game film here, game film there. And you got to have meeting with staff several times a day. And yeah, it probably takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, I agree with you a little bit, Logan, that maybe the school board goes out and looks for a leader, a new leader, a new head guy to kind of come in and, take the realm and try to take the reins there. And who knows? But it'll be interesting. But they definitely need somebody that's going to come in there. And I agree with you. The staff that's there we have a great staff, and maybe the school board goes out and looks for a new head guy to kind of come in and run the show. And it's I really liked what Coach I said. And if you just bring somebody in that helps delegate some of that stuff out, keeps those guys involved, and that'd be a good thing to do.
I will say, though, too, as far as the coaching situation, I think one of the best things you can do if you're looking for a head coach is to make some kind of hiring committee, because that's what I've heard. I heard Ayersville do, where they kind of included coaches, former coaches or former players, and some people in the community on top of like the athletic department at the school. So you're getting a whole 360-degree view on the situation, and then looking at these candidates. And I'm not saying that the people on the administrative staff would make a right or wrong decision, but again, are they involved with football that much, and do they know the ins and outs, and you know what I mean, type deal. And I think you look at Ayersville, and they hit a home run with Coach Mickey, I think personally, as far as a great coach and great guy, and that's what they did, and I feel like they had a very good choice in him, and they're doing well this year. So
maybe this is just shooting from the hip. Maybe you get like athletic boosters involved, because obviously as a coach, you're gonna have to work with the athletic boosters, and with some money stuff and buying equipment and that kind of stuff. So maybe who knows? Like you said, the hiring committee. Maybe you pull people from there. That's a source where you could pull people from.
Sure. Yeah, and I totally agree. So I'll be curious to see. I don't think anyone really knows at this point, but I think this is something you look at after the season, because it's playoff time, and you got to put all that aside, and you got to focus on one thing in mind, and that's winning the next game.
One game at a time now.
Yep. So interesting hot take, but we'll see what unfolds. Let's move on to the next one. Ottawa Hills versus Patrick Henry combined for over 80 points scored, and that's the first round playoff matchup. So thoughts on this hot take here?
I don't know. I don't think Coach I gives up 80. He gives up a bunch of points. I don't think they're going to score 80, but I don't think they give up that many.
No, I agree. I don't think Patrick Henry's defense allowed over 21, honestly, in this matchup.
Yeah, I don't really foresee it. I know Patrick Henry's capable of scoring a lot of points. Ottawa Hills is more of a run type offense too, which obviously, I mean, you can still score quick with the run offense, but again, you burn a lot of clock too. But to score 80 combined points from both teams, I don't think that's likely. I honestly too, looking at this game, I know we're going to kind of talk about it in the game predictions, but I think Patrick Henry is the favorite as the lower seed in this game. Especially we talked with Coach I, and they're riding high on momentum. Coach Inselman has those boys playing right over there in Patrick Henry. I would be scared to play Patrick Henry in the playoffs right now. So
Coach Inselman, I mean, battle tested, and Coach Karchner, which he's experienced. Hills, my bad, wrong coach, but my take just fizzled up. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It happens to the best of us.
You saw the next one.
For no reason, yes. I glanced ahead, but if you're going to have any coach on, you want to go into battle with you, you'd want Coach Inselman.
Well, I mean, I think basically we all kind of summed up that one. I don't think that one was too complicated, but we'll go into the next hot take. And Keith, if you want to start it off, the hot take is healthy Evergreen contends in NWOL for the 2023-2024 season.
Yeah,
So
would it be nice to see? Yes, but you still have your Archbold, your Liberty Center, your Patrick Henry. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, and they have 8 teams qualify for the playoffs this year, 8 out of 10.
Jesus.
So I mean,
or they had 6 out of 8.
6 out of 8.
Yep.
So still impressive. We hope Coach Karchner continues to build his program, but contends for a title. Yes, would be nice to see, but you still have a lot of the big boys to jump over. So
I don't think that's soon. Maybe give him a couple more years, get his athletes in there, get his offense more solidified, that kind of stuff, and then maybe you see him get up there. But again, contending for be a serious contender in NWOL, you really got to ramp it up. I mean, there's a lot of good teams in the NWOL.
Yeah, you're kind of playing the elite of the elite there. We talk about the NWOL as like the gauntlet for any team that's involved in that. So it's hard to say that they would necessarily contend next year. Yeah, but who knows?
All right. I guess I'll throw my 2 cents in too. Obviously, we've seen some growth in Evergreen's program from last year to this season. I mean, you go and look at the scores; they're much more competitive in games. I feel like you can tell that there was some improvement, but again, they play such a tough conference schedule, and at the end of the day, it's if you're gonna be a contender, you got to win at least one of the big games against your bigger schools. At least you got to win 1 or 2. I would say 2 to be a contender. You look at the teams that are consistently good in the NWOL. Patrick Henry, Wason, Archbold, Liberty Center, even Delta now, Bryant, you got to win one or 2 of those games to at least show that you're starting to move in that game. And I think once they do win one of those games, I think then you can start talking a little bit more about Evergreen being a contender. But I think that's still about a year or 2 away.
Yeah, it's one of, probably other than the MAC, is probably one of the tougher conferences in around our region.
For sure.
It really is.
Yeah, and really the only game they competed in the NWOL was against Delta. I think it was 23-21 game, and pretty much the rest of them they were handled, other than Swan. But
yeah. All right, let's move on. This is the last hot take here, but it's a good one. If North Central wants to be taken seriously as a program, you cannot pack it in at halftime of game. Regardless of injuries, plenty of teams in the state and area have finished games with low numbers. In other words, Van Loo with 10 this year. So who wants to start this game? Well, actually, I'll explain what happened. So North Central is playing against Whiteford, Michigan, and they ended up calling the game at halftime due to injuries from North Central, and the game was concluded at halftime. So thoughts on this hot take here?
I kind of have to disagree with this because this is North Central's first season as a varsity program. And like they said, Van Loo they had a game with 10 players this year, but as your first year as a varsity team, you got to take the wins when you can take them. And when you're risking the health of players, the more players that are hurt, the more players that are going to get hurt. Because then you start putting more and more pressure on the kids that are remaining. And sometimes it's almost better to see when you need to cut your losses and just kind of ride it out what you've got, go into the next year and, build upon that rather than, let your kids continue to get beat on and kind of give yourself that name of like, well, it was more about the wins than the kids kind of thing at that point.
Yeah. I kind of got mixed emotions. I kind of agree with you, AJ, because it depends on who you're playing. I mean, they only had 17 players, and they dropped down to 14 during the game because they had 3 more kids get hurt. That's correct, right?
Yeah, they ended the game with 14. I'm not sure exactly how many on the team, but somewhere around there.
My understanding was they already had 3 starters out when they started the game. Then they lost 3 additional starters. So you got to start thinking about, okay, so where am I at player-wise? I've got, if you figure, okay, I got 6 starters, 6 of my starters out. In a school like North Central, you're probably playing. Those guys are playing both ways, so you think out of your 11 starters, 6 of them are gone. Yep. Who are the rest of the kids that are playing? I mean, are you getting to the point where you're relying on freshmen to play so that you can continue the game? At that point, for safety reasons, then maybe you call it off. But my understanding was maybe that Whiteford was going to play their JV squad. And if that's the case, then maybe you keep. I don't know. I just that's a tough decision. I wasn't there. I don't know what was going on. And as a coach, being a coach myself, I would be weighing that option for sure because it's all about safety. And you can count the wins and losses, and I'm going to say it brutally. You can stick those up your butt when it comes to safety of my athletes. That's what I'm worried about. And if I have to get down to the point where I'm playing, and I think Whiteford was 9-0.
Yeah, they're pretty good in Michigan.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm playing a team that's just beating the crap out of us, and I've already got a couple kids hurt, and I'm already down a couple of starters, and I'm looking on my bench going, man, I'm gonna have to rely on some freshmen or some sophomores that aren't ready for the varsity realm yet. Playing against a team like that, I don't know that I do that either. It's a tough situation, and unless you're there and in that situation, it's kind of tough to make that call.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Tony. I feel like that's hard to say, but and honestly, first and foremost, I mean, obviously you always want to take care of your players, and safety is always a concern. But on the other hand, again, to forfeit the game and pack it up at halftime of the game, like that's where I understand too where this is coming from. If you want to be taken seriously as a program, again, you're essentially packed up and quit at halftime.
Yeah.
But I mean, you are saying player safety, stuff like that. So again, that's a tough situation to be in.
It is.
But I don't necessarily know that there's a right answer to this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you do one way or the other, I think you're gonna get backlash from either side.
I mean,
of
if you don't pack it up and you get 3 more kids hurt, then people are really going to be like, "Why didn't you?" Then you're really going to be getting sold.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's a tough decision, and especially as a coach and trying to make that decision. And man, it was. I agree with the fact that if you want to be taken seriously, you can't quit in the middle of a game. That doesn't look good for your players. That doesn't look good for your program. Teams don't want to schedule a team that's going to pack up and leave at halftime.
Exactly, yeah.
But and maybe this is going to be another thing that North Central reevaluates, and maybe they don't. Maybe they drop to an 8-man schedule.
I was just about to mention that. So I think that's where some people get frustrated too. I think that people are saying, well, if they don't have the numbers, then why don't they drop to an 8-man, and why are they trying to compete in 11-man? You know what I mean? Type thing. So, again, I mean, that's just a tough situation. Hopefully those players get healthy and they can have full strength come playoff time. So,
and you got to start somewhere as a varsity program. Coming out, they had a good season. I mean,
great
they did
season.
well. So like, it's not like they're they can't be taken seriously or anything like that. Like they came out first year, put up some good fights against some good teams, for their competition level. So like they did well. You can't hang your head in shame about how they performed this year.
No, actually, if you look, I mean, for those that don't know, like Coach Thompson in North Central actually qualified for the playoffs, so they're 14th, and they actually finished ahead of Eden. So they will actually play an opening round playoff game.
Yeah,
I mean, at least they're scheduled to, as far as we know they are. So
wonderful. See, I wonder how that's going to work if they decide not to play because due to injuries. I mean, what does that team just get a bye basically for the first round? I mean,
yes.
I haven't looked to see who they play, but
I believe they play Waynesfield Goshen.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so it's
who's 10-0. So.
All right. Well, that concludes our hot takes. Let's go ahead. We'll go into the playoff first round game predictions. So we'll go ahead and we'll give our predictions for this, and we'll see who everyone thinks is going to win in the first round. So let's kick it off here. Liberty Benton 7-3 at Archbold 8-2. Obviously, all the home teams here are the higher seeded teams, but again, I think this game's going to be close because we talked. Archbold took a tough loss last week to Patrick Henry, and Liberty Benton, they're a quality team, and I think this week is going to say a lot about Archbold. If they come out and they respond and they take care of business, I think they're a contender in the region. But I don't know. I think there's a big question mark. But I'm still going to lean Archbold just a little bit. So I think this game is within a couple scores.
Yeah, I'm with you, Logan. Liberty Benton's another one of those schools that's a little bit out of our coverage area, but they never ever seem to have a bad season at any sport. It doesn't seem
they're quality in athletics.
Aaron Kraft and boys from down that area. But I took the Blue Streaks.
Yep, I'm going with the Blue Streaks here as well. Just, I don't know. I want to go for Archbold because they are in our coverage area, and we've seen them do very well this year, so I would like to see them continue on. Liberty Benton has a kind of a spread offense similar to what, PH is running now, correct?
They like to throw the ball around quite a bit.
I'm going to pick Archbold, but I agree with Logan. I think this is going to be close, and I'm picking Archbold because I hope Archbold wins, and we talked about this 100 times. It could lead to Rocky IV.
That's right. And for you, those of you who don't know, that Archbold and Liberty Center could potentially play each other for a fourth time in the last 2 years, and it's been quite the battle. So you don't want to miss out on that if Archbold wins. Last pick here, Bryce had Archbold, and Bryce says Archbold, duh. So there's no question with Bryce. So
that's an 8-9 matchup. So that's you're not looking at like a 2-14.
Right?
Seed
no, not at all.
Archbold's going to have the work cut out for them too.
Absolutely.
But again, like you said, Archbold's a hard place to go in there and try to win a ball game. So give Archbold home field advantage.
All right, let's move on. Next game, Port Clinton 5-5 at Liberty Center 10-0. I think Liberty Center being the 1 seed, it's going to be a bloodbath, and I think Liberty Center takes care of business. And I can only imagine what that crowd and Liberty Center is going to look like for a round 1 home playoff game. So. I'm going Liberty Center Tigers, and they win big.
Yeah, I agree with you, Logan. Taking the Tigers.
Yeah, I think they're going to go in there and butcher them, so it's going to be Liberty Center all night.
Yeah, Liberty Center, they got a great crowd anyways, like you said, Logan, and just as the playoffs go, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So LC for me at home.
And Bryce had Liberty Center as well. Next game, Delta 5-5 at Elmwood 9-1, and Keith and myself, we were able to watch Elmwood a little bit, and I just saw that their quarterback, their wide receiver, and their running back have all set the career records for their respective yardage, and we've seen all 3 of those kids play, and they can flat out ball. So we know what Elmwood's capable of. They definitely are a very quality team, and I think they beat Delta pretty handily. So I'm going Elmwood.
Yeah, I'm with you, Logan. Taking the Royals, and hopefully we can go to Elmwood next Friday. It would be great. And more on that later.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going with Elmwood here.
Yeah, Elmwood for me. I just think they're going to be too powerful for Delta first round.
And Bryce had Elmwood. So Elmwood across the board. Next game, Bryan 6-4 at Elyria Catholic 8-2. Though Bryan came off, coming off a huge win last week, and they're riding a lot of momentum. I think Elyria Catholic's just going to be a little too much. Long bus ride too for Bryan. So I'm going Elyria in this game.
Yep, same. Taking Elyria.
Yeah, I really think the bus ride is going to take a huge toll on Bryan here because you're going to come off that bus and just not be loose and not be ready, and it's going to be quite the intimidating factor a little bit there. So I'm going with Elyria.
Yep, Elyria for me.
And Bryce had Elyria as well. Next game, Wason 6-4 at Van Wert 9-1, and a couple of coverage teams from NWO Sports. I think what we've seen out of Wason the last couple of weeks, they've really been struggling. And like I said earlier, if they can develop a passing game and control the ball, that's the big thing, is they've had so many turnovers in the last couple of weeks. I think they have a shot, but again, Van Wert and quarterback Aiden Pratt has been phenomenal all year long, and I was looking at some of his stats. He's probably one of the leaders for offensive player of the year for NWO Sports. But this kid can flat out play. But I'm going Van Wert, and I think they win pretty handily here.
Yeah, I think one thing we talked about all year with Wason is they have the offense as far as passing and receiving game, but in this game right here, if you're like Coach Sean Moore, you probably want to play keep away. You want to possess the ball, and with the lack of running game, I really don't see Wason utilizing like a short passing game in place of lack of running to pull off the upset. But yeah, I'm taking Van Wert. Yeah,
I'm going with Van Wert here. The only thing that's separating them from being 10-0 right now is a 1-point game against Wapak earlier in the season. So they're a force to be reckoned with here. Yep. So Van Wert.
Cougars for me.
And Bryce had Van Wert. And real quick here, Aiden Pratt, quarterback for Van Wert, his stats on the year, I saw this, 192 of 267, good for a 71.9% completion percentage, which that is crazy from a high school quarterback. And you know how tough of teams that Van Wert plays. 2,824 passing yards, 32 passing touchdowns with 3 interceptions, which that passing touchdown ratio to interception is also very, very impressive. And then looking 100 carries for 597 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. So he's definitely probably one of the better athletes in the area. That's safe to say. But just wanted to throw that in there real quick. Next game, Defiant 6-3 at Cloverleaf 8-2. Another long bus ride. It's awesome to see Defiance make the playoffs. They got in, but I think Cloverleaf's just going to be a little too much. You know, they're a quality team. I'm going with Cloverleaf in this one.
Yep. Taking Cloverleaf, but a successful season so far for Defiance. Go 6-4, competitive in their game last week at Wapak. I mean, they lost 19-0. But yeah, I just think Defiance is just like another year away.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going with Cloverleaf as well here.
Yep. Cloverleaf. I agree with Keith. I think Defiance has got a great start, but I think they're going to need to build a little bit.
And Bryce had Cloverleaf. So Cloverleaf from all of us. Next game, Hardin Northern 6-4 at Antwerp 10-0. I think it's safe to say we've seen Antwerp and what they're capable of, and as long as all their players stay healthy, they have a good shot at winning the region, I believe. So I'm going Antwerp.
Yep, taking the Archers and Coach Hale.
Yeah, this is not quite as long as a bus ride as some of the games, but they're still going all the way down to near Kenton and Ada.
Antwerp's playing at home.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry. So I guess it would be a long bus ride for Hardin. Yeah. So either way, I'm going with Antwerp here.
Yeah, Antwerp for me too. It's I don't see Coach Hale and those guys getting bumped off first round.
And Bryce had Antwerp. Next game, Ederton 7-3 at Gibsonburg 8-2. And I think the big question mark everyone's asking is Corey Everett's going to be healthy this game. And if he is, then they have at least somewhat of a shot. If he's not healthy, I think there's zero chance of Ederton going out and competing in this game because we know how big of a role he plays in Edgerton's offense and defense. So I'm going Gibsonburg.
Gibsonburg as well.
Gibsonburg
for me.
And Bryce had Gibsonburg. Next game, Napoleon 4-6. There we go. Tenora 7-3 at Highland 7-3, and this is a game we're going to be at. And let's go ahead and we'll make this the NWO Sports Game of the Week because honestly, out of any of these teams and being the under or the lower seed, I think Tenora's got a pretty good shot at winning this one, and I'm excited to go down to Highland. We've seen some of their facilities, and it's going to be a good one. So. I know Highland's got a running back that he's rushed for 2,200 rushing yards, 27 rushing touchdowns. This kid is a beast. He's about 6'1", 215 pounds, and I've seen some of his film, and the kid is an athlete, and he's even blocked some punts too. Yeah. So that's something to reckon with. So
special teams.
At the end of the day, though, I like what I saw out of Tenora last week against Hicksville, and I'm going to go the Rams on this one. So I think the Rams win their first round matchup here. You know, a 10 versus 7 seed. So I think there's a pretty good shot for them to win.
Yeah, I agree with you, Logan. Everything you said. Just doing a little bit of prep for our game Friday. Like Highland lost their quarterback to a broken arm 2 weeks ago, so he's out. I guess they're starting a freshman quarterback, and even their running back sounds like he's battling a little bit of a leg injury. So I assume he'll be healthy. I mean, healthy enough, but it's going to be a game where neither team's really going to pass a lot. They're going to rely on the running game, but I like we're seeing from Sonora here the last month. So I'm taking the Rams.
I'm going with the Rams as well. I'm just curious, where did the rankings end up here with Tenora? Where'd they?
10.
10. Okay. All right. Just curious.
Yeah, I think I picked Tenora also. I think Tenora's it's really going to depend on Highland's defense. You guys talked about Tenora's offense. I think Tenora's offense, if it's clicking like it's been the last couple of weeks, but
looking at the numbers, if I remember right, usually I look like you don't know the strength of schedule that they play, at least, I mean, with us being out of area, but like their plus minus was only about 50, I think. Like points scored to points allowed was, I think, 270 to 230. So they do give up some points. They do give up some points, yes.
And I really think our linebacking crew, our front line, Javen Gaines, Askins, those guys are going to contain this guy. And every yard he's going to get, I think it's going to be tough. I could be wrong, but I really think they'll scheme well against him and they'll hold him in check, I think.
Yep. And Bryce had Tenora. So Tenora from all of us. Next game, Napoleon 4-6 at Glenville 9-0. And we've discussed this one too. It's another long game. And Glenville's got a couple guys that are 3-star, 4-star recruits. It's going to be a tough game for the Napoleon Wildcats. But nonetheless, regardless if they win or lose, it's been an okay season for Napoleon. And I think them making the playoffs and winning that last game, that was a must win. I think that's going to really jumpstart them for next season and Coach Swery. But at the end of the day, Glenville is the, I believe, number 1 seed. So I'm going Glenville, and I think they win big. So,
yeah, I agree with you, Logan. Napoleon's in for a long night, I think, unfortunately.
Glenville.
With Glenville, I agree with Keith.
And Bryce said Glenville as well. Next game, Delphus Jefferson 6-4 at Ayersville 7-3, and these two actually played earlier in the season. I believe it was either week 2 or week 3, but I believe Ayersville also won by 20 points.
Yeah, it was 41-21.
Okay, yeah. So definitely, it's hard to beat a team twice, and especially in the first round of playoffs. But I think Ayersville and the Pilots and Coach Mickey and the boys over there, I think they pull it off and they get a round 1 victory. So I'm going the Pilots here.
Yeah, I'm taking the Pilots, but after a rough start, Delphus Jefferson responded very well. Just looking at their schedule, it's like they won 5 out of their last 6. So, but I'm taking the Pilots regardless. But as you said, it's tough to beat a team twice, especially the same year. And Delphus Jefferson obviously is playing a lot better than what they did their first meeting. So,
yeah, I kind of tossed this one around a little bit, but I'm going with the Pilots just because once again, they're a coverage area. That they're a team that I like to see do well. I always like to root for the local teams. So hopefully Ayersville can pull this one out.
Yeah, they beat up Lipsick 26-6. That was week 8.
Yeah, I looked at Bryce, took Delphus Jefferson. We've all kind of been on the same page. I think everybody's picking the same teams, and Bryce jumps out here and picks Delphus Jefferson. But he might be onto something here. It's going to come down to turnovers, and if Ayersville could take care of the ball and Honstein has a good game and takes care of the ball for him,
agreed.
I think Ayersville will win this one again.
And Bryce, again, like Tony said, this was he went away from all of us, and he went Delphus Jefferson. But again, looking here, I think that was the only game, kind of jumping ahead, that anyone had different. But we'll still give each other our picks and give our little 2 cents on why we're going with that team. So we'll move on to the next game here. Patrick Henry 6-4 at Ottawa Hills 8-1. And I've kind of stated this before, and I know Patrick Henry is the lower seed, but I do not want to play Patrick Henry right now if I'm another team. And honestly, I would say Patrick Henry is the favorite in this game. Ottawa Hills squeaked by and ended up beating Eden last week for a TAC championship, but TAC is no NWAL. And Patrick Henry has been battle tested this year, and I think they go into Ottawa Hills and I think they go in and show them who's boss and why Patrick Henry deserves to end up getting a win.
Yeah, this is what you said, Logan. This is why you play. I guess you don't choose what conference you play in, but if you play a rough conference schedule like PH does and all the NWAL teams, like you're already battle tested, you're ready for playoffs about halfway through the season. So, yeah, taking PH and Coach I.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do here this week and even how far they make it into the playoffs. So let's go Patriots.
Yeah, PH for me also.
And Bryce had Patrick Henry. Next game, Wayne Trace 5-5 at Crestview Ashland 10-0. Again, Wayne Trace has got another long trip here, but I think Crestview is going to be just a little too much for the Wayne Trace Raiders. But again, another team similar to Napoleon. It was good to get them into the playoffs under second-year Coach Holden. But I don't know. Maybe they can go there, make a little bit of noise, but I think Crestview is going to be too much for them.
Yep, taking Crestview.
Now, this is not the same Crestview we've been covering, correct?
Yeah, it's Crestland to Ashland. That's
what I thought.
That was Convoy.
Convoy
Crestview.
Okay. So, yeah, seeing a team like – I thought this was the other team, and I've kind of kept an eye on them a little bit here and there, and they've played a couple of teams kind of like common enemies here with some of the teams we've covered, so I've kind of kept an eye on them. It seems like they're doing very, very well, so I think they're going to come in and win this game pretty well.
Yep, Crestview for me. I think Wayne Trace's luck's going to run out.
Yeah, and Bryce said Crestview from Ashland as well. Next game, North Central 6-4 at Waynesfield Goshen 10-0. Again, I'm still up in the air about North Central because I know there's a numbers issues. They finished last week with 14 kids, and I had to stop at halftime. So I think obviously they're going to need all their players healthy to compete in this game, but I think their run's going to come to an end. But nonetheless, it was a successful first season ever as a varsity program. I mean, going 6-4 in the regular season and making the playoffs. But I think Waynesfield Goshen, an experienced team, a team that's been around for a while.
Yeah.
I think they know what playoffs are about. So I'm going Waynesfield Goshen.
Yeah, I think if you're North Central, you just try and take as many positives away from the season as you can heading into this game, here and after this game. Just focus on the positives because it's probably going to get ugly. Taking Waynesfield Goshen.
Yeah, I'm taking Waynesfield Goshen as well, and it's definitely a smart idea for North Central to continue to play out the season, even if they are short-staffed, just to get a little bit of that playoff experience. Because coming out your first year and having playoff berth, it's one of those things. It's like you get that experience in your belt, and if you get fortunate enough to get there again next year, you got a little experience and you keep building on that. So, going with Waynesfield Goshen, however.
Waynesfield Goshen for me.
And Bryce went Waynesfield Goshen as well. A couple more 11-man here. Eden 5-5 at Macomb 9-1. And we kind of discussed this earlier in the podcast. Macomb is one tough team. Their only loss this year is to Marion Local, which we all know. Everyone and their brother knows how good Marion Local is. But Eden's struggling with some injuries. I think they're going to need those players back. They're all key players. I just think Macomb at the end of the day is going to be way too much for Eden. And Macomb's going to win big here.
I agree with you. Taking Macomb.
Macomb.
Macomb for me.
And Bryce had Macomb. Last game here for 11-man. Black River 6-4 at Columbus Grove 8-2. Again, I don't even know where Black River is. Honestly,
same thing. I don't know.
I don't heard of Black River.
That's one team I've never heard of, but I'm curious. But nonetheless, Columbus Grove has been playing very well here at the end of the season. Yep. They had a couple tough losses early on, but they've rebounded and they've played very well. They played the Columbus Grove football that everyone knows they play. So I'm going Columbus Grove in this one.
I'm with you, Logan. Taking Columbus Grove.
Yeah, let's go Columbus Grove.
Yep. Grove for the win.
And Bryce had Columbus Grove. A couple 8-man games here, and they actually have their own conference tournament, which is cool to see them have some playoff action. So Stryker 6-3 at Toledo Christian 8-1. I think Toledo Christian, are they number one seed? I believe. I can't remember, but I think I'm going to go Toledo Christian on this one, and I think that they're going to go ahead and win this game pretty big.
Yeah, taking Toledo Christian.
Toledo Christian.
Toledo Christian for me as well.
And Bryce had Toledo Christian as well. Last game here, Fort Wayne Crusaders 5-3 at Holgate 5-3. And we kind of saw earlier in the season, Fort Wayne got Holgate early on, and then Holgate got Fort Wayne later on. So this is round 3 of this matchup. But I think Holgate's going to pull it off, especially being a home game. I'm looking forward to it, and I think the Holgate Tigers will win this matchup.
Yes, taking the Tigers. Just about the whole 8-man thing, they do not have a playoff, but Lynn and his crew, Coach Strock and Coach Junker, did I think it was a couple of weeks ago, they had an interview with Joe Miller, the 8-man commissioner. And if anybody gets a chance to listen to that, please do, because Joel does a fantastic job. It's about 25-minute interview, but he does a great job explaining what they would like to see the future of 8-man to be, like what his vision is. So, yeah, check that out on the Black Swamp podcast. It's actually a very good interview. To see what vision he does have for, the future of 8-man football and the playoff system.
I'm going to go with Holgate on this one.
Holgate as well.
and Bryce had Holgate. And just for those of you listening, Stryker was the 4 seed. They play at number 1 Toledo Christian. Number 3 seed Tri-State Crusaders play at number 2 Holgate. And then there is a consolation game, number 6 St. Mary Central Catholic at number 5 Danbury. So that's how the 8-man conference playoff goes. So, well, guys, that concludes our podcast here. Any closing thoughts wrapping up round 1 of the playoffs podcast?
It's playoff time, baby. Let's see what happens. It's going to be a long trip. I think we're all loading up. If people are listening, and I think we're going to load up. We're going to be broadcasting through Tenor Rams Live for Tenor's game Friday night. So if you're not making the 2.5 hour trip down there, you'll be able to catch it on Tenor Rams Live.
Yeah, we'll have her. The AD down there, he called me personally, had about a 10-minute conversation. It just seemed like a fantastic gentleman, more than helpful. So yeah, we're going to make the trip down there. Looks like a fantastic campus. So yeah, we'll have the game for everybody Friday night.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how Tenor performs now that they've had some changes in the offense, and see you guys all Friday.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it should be a good time, and like Tony said, it's playoff time. This is the best time of the year. You get to see a lot of good teams, a lot of good football, and as the rounds go on, the games keep getting bigger and bigger, and they keep getting better and better. And I'm getting excited, and I said I'm want to watch a lot of games coming up.
This is like where the train just starts rolling. Like if you have a really good team and you progress throughout each Friday into Saturdays later on, like you see people at games that haven't been in games in a decade. You're like, whoa, I thought you moved away. No, I just don't come to games. Well, the whole community gets behind you, and people just flock, and wherever the venue is, they just travel the hour and a half. And
Logan, AJ, you guys played in the playoffs, and Logan, obviously you went to the state semifinals, and I just remember being there as a fan and seeing the stands packed. It was great. I mean, sold out. I mean, it's got to be exciting to.
Yeah, I mean, I've played in some big games, but in college even too, and those high school regional final, state semifinal games, those are awesome because you just have the whole community behind you, and when you walk out on that field, it's just a different atmosphere and a different feeling. So. All I can say is you got to take one game at a time because the game at hand is the game that matters, and you don't get to the next one unless you win that one. Right. So definitely take in every moment of it because those moments will be gone before you know it. So again, I just want to say, if you're out there, go ahead and attend these games because you're about to see some quality football, especially in Northwest Ohio. So get out there, support your teams and athletics, and go ahead and have a good time. Bundle up. I think it's supposed to be not too bad this Friday, but I'm imagining the way things have rolled with it being warmer here, sometime it's got to change, and it's about to be freezing cold here soon.
Then the time change comes in a couple of weeks, so then you lose. Yeah. It's already dark when you get there. So.
Right, exactly. So, all right. Well, I'd just like to thank all of our sponsors: 3-Chord, Bat Stevens Body Shop, Tenor Rams Live, Jimenez Basketball Academy, Fairchild Family Chiropractic, NWO Basketball, and Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty. We would like to give a special thanks to Jeff Batt for allowing us to use his amazing new facility at Bat Stevens Body Shop for today's podcast and all future podcasts. Go ahead and stay tuned for the next NWO Sports Podcast in the near future. Thanks for watching.